economics itself is like studying the implications of human action in a society where money is used as a universal medium of exchange.
And we're rolling.
All right.
This is Tracy Green with Weekly Fascination. I've got my friend Karras here. We're going to talk about economics.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, before we started recording, I'm so ignorant about economics. But so you could say anything you want, and I'll just nod my head and smile.
Yeah, well, being ignorant is admitting you're ignorant if you're ignorant is a good first step, because Murray Rothbard, who's an economist that was very influential to me as I learned economics and continues to be. He's been dead for 25 years, but his works have been important. He said something funny. He said, "It's no crime to be ignorant of economics, which after all is a specialized discipline. But it is irresponsible to have a loud and vociferous opinion while in a state of ignorance." So it's much better to be ignorant and admit you're ignorant than to be ignorant and claim to be smart and destroy worlds and economies and civilization as we know it.
So we're starting from a good place.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're starting from a good place.
So what got you into economics?
Yeah, so I was a screenwriting and playwriting major at Drexel University in Philly. They had a pretty good program. They had some professionals working in the program. Actually, the guy who wrote the animated movie Anastasia from the 90s.
Oh.
Do you remember that?
Is that a Disney film?
It wasn't, but but it looked like one. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was like one of the first non-Disney looking films. Yeah, I forget the exact studio, but yeah, his name is Bruce Graham. He was like one of my professors and stuff. So it was a very Ian Abrams was also a screenwriter. He was another professor in that program. So that's why I was attracted to the school, because I made a serious go at that. But after a year or two, I was writing these screenplays, and they were technically okay for a student, but they didn't have much soul. There wasn't really much going on. I was honest to myself that like these aren't amazing scripts. I'm not really portraying anything very dramatic. It's kind of just mundane stuff.
Well, how much drama can you write when you're 18, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's what made me think like, look, I don't even know how the world works. Like, who am I to like write these stories about adults in like 18th century Russia or whatever? Like, I don't even know anything about like the world anywhere, right? So it made me do some soul searching. Like, what do I really want to do in my life? Do I really like want to go to Hollywood? Like the next year, I would have went to Hollywood for like an internship for 6 months and like fetch coffee for some producer or something, And it made me really research the industry and think hard about like, what do I want for my life? Where do I see myself being successful? Which kind of people should I be around? What's my own talent? Like, what's my value added? Like, just by my proclivity, my talent, my natural talent and interest. That kind of drew me in various directions. I was, doing a lot of literature, history, philosophy, this kind of stuff. And then it was 2012 at the time, so I was watching the presidential debates before the actual race. That's the year it was Obama-Romney, but I was watching the Republican debates beforehand, before Romney was selected. And Ron Paul was running. And this guy, it was my first time hearing him. He had run in 2008, and he ran as a libertarian in the 70s also. But, this is really my first time experiencing this whole world. And he talked about being anti-war, and he was really harping on that, how Iraq was a mistake, and the constant interventions are a mistake. And that was, right at home with me. But then he's also talking about economics, like free market economics. And I was like, hey, I thought they're all evil, right? Because, I was a good democratic socialist in high school. I watched Michael Moore documentaries. But so I was kind of like, well, I love this dude. He seems genuine. He seems like a great guy. But, I don't know about this other stuff, so let me look into it, because I was at least open at the time. So I went online, and he talked about Austrian economics was the word he kept using. So I was like, what the hell is Austrian economics? But I went online. I looked at some forum. Somebody posted like, hey, if you're interested, read these books in order. So the very first book on that list is a common one that's recommended to people who, if they come to me, or if they come to people like me, they'll say, hey, what should I read? And usually the recommendation for the past 50 years or more has been read Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. And there's one lesson he begins with, the book, and then the rest of it's just applications in like the U.S. at the time. He was writing in the 1940s U.S. at the time, but so nowadays some of the examples might be a bit dated, especially for like non-Americans. You really have no reference to like what was going on, but the economic logic is timeless. So that was the key to me to read this book. At the time, it was 80 years old almost at the time. No, it was like 60 or so, but. And then the one lesson is that you can't only look at the seen, but you also have to consider the unseen. You can't just look at the short run consequence. You have to also look at the consequence in the long run. You can't just look at the effect on one person or one party. You have to look at the effect on everyone. So this lesson, it was not new to Hazlitt. He was just an economic journalist, basically. He worked for the New York Times, I believe Newsweek, and various other. He had a very distinguished career. He was a big deal for a time, but he was just echoing something written by a French political philosopher, economist guy named Frédéric Bastiat in the 19th century. In 1850, it was published. It was called "That Which Is Seen and That Which Is Not Seen." So the central idea that Hazlitt brought back, that Bastiat first talked about, and then many of the economists that I respect kept alive since Bastiat. It's not like Hazlitt was the first to say this since Bastiat. You know, many people were getting to the same thing, but Hazlitt was just very precise. He's a very good writer because he was a journalist, and a very good journalist, you know. So Bastiat gave an example at the very beginning of this essay called "That Which Is Seen and That Which Is Not Seen" in French. You know, I can't say the French title off the top of my head, but the basic idea is that imagine some shop owner. And then his son is reckless, and he throws a stone, and it goes through the window of the store. And then, of course, the shop owner is angry because he's, oh no, like now I have to spend this money to repair the window. I did not wake up today expecting to do this, right? But then Bastiat writes, imagine townspeople gather around. What happened? And then he's kind of crying in the front lawn, and they say, oh, don't worry, sir, because now your spending to the glazier to repair the window will stimulate the economy. So, because by you spending to the glazier to repair the window, then he has more money to spend for his own use, you know, and then they have more money to spend, and blah blah blah, and our circular flow is going, and everything's good, right? And Bastiat, his central insight in this essay was, no, you can't just look at what actually happened. You have to consider what would have happened absent this intervention. So, if you imagine the stone going through the window is like an intervention at some new course of the world, now the world is out one window. Okay. So it happens to be that the guy owns that store, so he's the one who has to pay. But he could have used that money for other purposes, whether it's investing in some other thing, whether it's saving, whether it was consuming for himself. And of course, whenever you use money, it's going somewhere. And when you save, of course, there's stuff going on with savings, and people like Keynes, the people who make the argument Bastiat was representing, the anti what Bastiat was saying. They'll say, "Oh no, but savings pulls money away from the economy, and that's bad for everybody." Because, but we can get into savings later as like an economic concept that's important. But no matter what he would have done, it wouldn't. It's not like the world would have been worse off without. It's destruction's only destruction is basically the conclusion, right? Okay. So you might have heard this argument a lot that like World War II got us out of the Depression, and like you like maybe we need to like you grow more after you get bombed and this kind of thing. It's like no. Like the insight of Bastiat is that destruction is destruction. It's like very common sense and simple, right? It's like you could have done things if you already had your house that wasn't bombed. Maybe you have a nicer, newer house after, but you also don't have all these other things you would have had. So maybe. You could have wrecked your own house. You can do it, right? You can just demolish your house if that's what you determine is your best bet at the time, right? Okay. So just because a better, newer house is built after it's wrecked doesn't mean that you're better off than you would have been if it wasn't wrecked. So this idea of the would have been, the counterfactual, is what really opened my eyes and made me like in love with economics, obsessed, and say, this is what I need to understand the world. This counterfactual reasoning, because we never get it really growing up. I mean, some people might come to it naturally, but we rarely get taught that like you have to think counterfactually, think alternate. Like just because something happened in 2001 and then the result was 2002 doesn't mean what happened in 2001 necessarily caused that thing. So you have to have what we call theoretical idea to match together the effect and the cause. Okay. You know? So that idea is like maybe reconsider what do I know at all? Like is everything I know wrong? You know. So that's basically how I got started with economics from there.
That's fascinating. Yeah. And now I know much more about economics than 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. Well, that one simple lesson makes you just look at the world a different way, or it made me look at the world a different way.
Totally.
And then from there, I read more books from that reading list, including one by Rothbard. But that one, it's called For a New Liberty, which I read, which is a typical like intro to like libertarianism, kind of the American version. And it's very excellent. There's excellent economic analysis in it, but it's more kind of political. So for a while, I was much more into like the political aspect of this kind of way of thinking. But over time, I kind of gravitated back towards academia. It's just happened to be what I'm good at. So, and what I'm interested in and what I'm passionate about. And since that time, I've really focused on the pure economics of it. I'm not so involved with like political theory so much anymore as I used to be interested in. But I still know plenty of people who are, and I'm still in that world. But mostly for now, I'm just pure economics and much more advanced than that beginning that I learned. But I started off on a good foot with that simple insight that Hazlitt and Bastiat talked about.
Well, this is one reason I was so excited to talk to you. My brother took a class from Murray Rothbard.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You mentioned, at UNLV, right?
Yep.
He was there for near the end of his life, his last 10 years there. He had an endowed chair, I believe. He was the S.J. Hall professor, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
And he brought over another guy who had come from Germany at the time, Hans Hoppe, who I think you've heard about. I think,
Hans
so he
Hermann
took
Hoppe.
Hans Hoppe's class as well.
My brother took his class too, yeah.
Yep, so they kind of represented some Austrian contingent, Austrian economics. Neither were Austrian, but it's called Austrian economics because it came from Austria originally. And so that was a unique place for 10 years or so. It was, I think, 87 or so they went there, and Rothbard died in 95.
Okay.
And then Hoppe continued until like 08 or so, around then.
Okay.
And there was some brouhaha, it was early like, cancel culture stuff going on. But he said something that a student took offense to or whatever.
Oh, boy.
You could look up online, but yeah.
Oh, boy.
But he's happy in Turkey right now, and he runs this conference called Property and Freedom Society. You can see the videos online. So, yeah, every year.
My brother said it was a very special time to be at UNLV.
I think so.
In fact, he wasn't even studying economics. He was studying hotel management and hospitality. But he was also doing, I want to say, a dual degree in finance.
Okay.
And he said, hey, who are these economics professors? I want to take their class. And one of them told him, he said, normally I don't take people who are not economics majors. But they let my brother in, and he loved the classes.
Cool.
And he learned so much.
That's awesome, yeah.
Yeah.
So you can talk to him next and see if he backs up what I say.
I'm sure he will.
Yeah.
Well, he got into finance. He ended up doing M&A in Europe.
Great.
And running a couple companies over there, and now has a company where he runs restaurants.
Cool.
And so I think he's been very successful.
Yeah.
But I think part of that is probably learning a sound theory of money.
Yeah. It helps for sure, and that's something we can talk about a bit too. Is like the Austrian approach, what we'll call the Austrian approach. For me, I almost wish we didn't have to put this label on it, because it's like I consider just good economics. I just consider economics, but unfortunately nowadays you have to really like specify so that people understand. But what's called Austrian economics, it's really much more practical. It's really Mises emphasized this a lot. Mises was Rothbard. He wasn't his official professor. Rothbard studied at Columbia, and Mises was teaching at NYU at the end of his life. But Mises had a seminar, and Rothbard would attend the seminar and became kind of his pupil that wasn't officially a doctorate student type of thing, Mm-hmm. And so Mises. His work is tied around this concept called like economic calculation, and Mises was a pioneer in monetary theory, which is something you want to talk about. So I can get into that, but Mises really emphasized the really mundane accounting management aspects of action, because that's what in Mises's view, and in my view, and people like me. Economics itself is like studying the implications of human action in a society where money is used as a universal medium of exchange. So in a society without money, a lot of the same concepts and categories are there. And we all do that first. We do something called a Robinson Crusoe understanding. So we have this conception of like Crusoe alone on the island. And what is he doing? He's like investing and he's saving and he's doing these things. He's growing his capital stock and this kind of thing, right? So he's building, a net to catch more fish, and then he's doing this to be richer. But really, the scope of economics, what it's more concerned with, is how do we live as a society with more than one person, with many people, with complicated structure of production, with all sorts of stuff. We got all these gadgets around us right now. Yeah. How does this even work at all? Where did this come from? How does it continue? How do we keep going? It's trying to understand this kind of thing. So Mises, by focusing on economic calculation, it's basically just saying, like, look, as an entrepreneur. You what you're concerned with is like, are you going to earn more money than you're spending in some relevant time window? It's not these mathematical models.
What's your ROI?
Yeah, really ROI. It's really all that's important. Yeah, just calculating time discounted expected return over time, right? And you have to guess the future, which is not we don't know, right? So the good entrepreneurs just guess correctly, whether they're lucky or not.
I think they just make. What do they say in investing? You only have to be right 51% of the time.
Yeah, as long as you minimize your losses, I guess. Yeah. As long as the 49 aren't catastrophic.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think I know a few entrepreneurs. I've interviewed entrepreneurs, and I think they're very smart people and very brave.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think sometimes they make like educated or calculated guesses.
That's all you can do about the future.
They don't really have a crystal ball, but they look at the market and they say, okay, you know what? People need this and people are willing to pay this much for it.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah. So you basically, entrepreneurs, Mises called it appraisal. So they say, look, I am imagining in my head that at this date in the future, or this range of dates in the future, this many consumers or whatever will be willing to spend this amount of money on this array of things I'm imagining, whether or not they were made before, or whether they're brand new, or whether they're made more efficiently, or whether they just never existed in the first place, whatever is being produced. Whatever it is, they have to just guess. Like, I think I can spend this much upfront for the next this many months, and I could still earn back enough. And if not, then you go under, nothing you can do,
go
right?
Bankrupt, yeah.
Yeah. So that practical element has always been there in the Austrian school. Karl Menger, who was the founder of the Austrian school, that's why it's called the Austrian schools, because Menger was an Austrian.
Okay.
Who was in the Austrian Empire. He was actually born, I think, in modern Poland, but anyway, but at the time it was kind of just language groups. It was,
we have a lot of people who are not Austrian.
Well,
Austrian economics.
He was Austrian by nationality,
Okay.
and it just today, maybe even Mises was born in modern Ukraine, but at the time it's all the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So
I get it.
But Menger, what he was reacting to, he was an economic journalist. He was also a journalist. So there's a lot of like journalism aspect going on, a lot of more practical, stuff.
And the old type of journalist, right? Like the investigative reporting, the people who people who'd go out in the field and interview people, right?
Well, he was more into like economic journalism. So he was like doing like price. He was like more like a Wall Street Journal writer, but like in those pages at the end that nobody reads, like only the traders read about like how the prices of wheat futures are moving and this kind of thing, right? I don't know. I haven't read. It's all in German only. I haven't read any of his. I've read all of his work that's been translated to English, but I haven't read. Unfortunately, I'm not German sufficient yet. But he basically, he was doing this job, and he's like, hey, and then he said, hey, I want to understand like where these prices come from. Like, what are these prices? What are they? What do they mean? And then he looked at all the textbooks at the time in Germany. He's like, this is like just not, he's like, this doesn't explain anything, because he was actually a practitioner, and he's like, well, this isn't useful. So then he kind of hit the books himself, and he was reading a lot of philosophy and sociology and all this stuff. And then he said, hey, now I know where prices come from. Prices, it's very simple now. It's gonna sound obvious too, but he's like, hey, prices come from human valuation, the subjective valuation, that like it's a human deciding that this thing is worth more than this amount of money, or more than this thing in barter to me, right? So when you buy an iPhone, you're like, this iPhone to me is worth more than $600. We don't know exactly. It doesn't mean iPhone equals $600. So that's a common pitfall even among economists. They think exchange is an equality. They say, oh, well, we did this, so then that equals that. And somehow that in people's minds that becomes some like metaphysical truth that like, oh, for all time it must equal that. It's like, no. All prices mean is that at that moment in time, the person paying the money preferred the object received to the amount of money spent, and the person giving them the object prefers the money received to the object that was sold.
So it's fair.
It's an inequality, of course. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't do it, assuming it's voluntary, right?
Yeah.
By definition, you wouldn't do it unless you prefer it, right?
Okay. So I prefer lunch more than I prefer this 1,000 yen in my pocket.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. But we don't know. That doesn't mean you wouldn't have paid more. Maybe you
I've
got
paid more.
maybe you're like, hey, even for that lunch I paid 1,000 for. Maybe I would have paid 1,500, but don't tell them, right?
Exactly.
they have to tell you, 1,500, then you decide, right? But so it's all inequalities. It's just each party gets an inequality. I prefer this to that, this to that. And this was one of the big insights that distinguishes the Austrian school from other schools. It seems very simple, but a lot of them, like Leon Walras was a Swiss French economist, and he basically brought in like the mathematical tradition of economics. And in some ways, his approach, besides the math, resembled a bit of what Menger was doing. But even Menger himself, in letters to Walras, was saying, actually, no, you're not getting at the core of our science, because you're focusing only on these imaginary equilibrium conditions with equality signs. When for Menger, actually, it's all inequality signs. There's no equality signs going on in human life, right?
So by inequality, you mean that this is worth more to me than the money.
Yes, exactly.
Pocket.
Yeah. So,
okay.
yeah. This more than that. Every choice we make in our even without the money using economy, like I mentioned, economics is about the money using economy. Even without that, this is human action. What it is, it's saying I prefer this to that.
Sure. Well, if I have water, and the Robinson Crusoe example, if I have water and he has fish, then the fish is worth more to me than the water I have.
It could be. Yeah.
So it could be.
Yeah.
So I'll
then
trade him
individually,
what I have for what he has.
Yep.
and then it's worth more to me than what I have. So.
And another key insight of Menger, since we're on Menger, was he solved this issue that was an issue for the classical economists. So a lot of people think like, oh, Adam Smith founded economics, and David Ricardo and John Stuart Mill, and they were excellent economists for their time, but they were kind of held down by this value theory they had, where they considered things equivalents in a sense, and they thought they kind of had this sense of like labor imparting value to objects, right? Whereas actually, from the Austrian point of view, I mean, labor is whatever. All that matters is what someone will pay for it, right? So work as much as you want. It doesn't really matter. If I don't, like, you can use a spoon to dig up the sidewalk, but you could have just used a shovel and like it's better off, right? Sure. So we're better off using less labor in a sense, right? But they were stuck on this problem called the paradox of values, the water diamond paradox. And they said, look, like humans need water and they don't need diamonds in the same physiological way, right? So why is it that when we look into the world, diamonds are selling for this crazy amount of money and water is like nothing, right? And this really was an issue in economics. And this issue persists in like Marxism today. So Marx was like the final classical economist in a sense, because they have this labor theory approach where they can't understand like the connection between prices and value. They have all sorts of convoluted definitions, and I'm not doing justice to like the way they define stuff, like socially necessary average labor time, this kind of thing. But basically the Austrians were in opposition to this whole approach. Or it was a refinement. So Mises saw himself refining Smith and Ricardo and these people, and Menger did as well. Menger wasn't trying to like throw out everything. He just said, hey, this is the logical extension. This is the correction to this error that unfortunately permeated the discipline before. So what Menger pointed out, which is really key, and which is what made me think of what you were saying about trading, is that what you're trading is you're trading very specific quantities. You're not just trading water and fish, right? You're trading 2 fish for a liter of water, something like this, right? Or whatever it is in your environment, right? And this is kind of the key. This finite element of things is like the key to like unlocking economics and the counterfactual, all this kind of thing. So understanding that what you're doing is trading finite quantities, and when you do that, you're trading. It's an inequality of valuation, meaning I value more than that, and you value more than that, and then we're both better off, and we both walk away happy. That's what the market is. It's this network of these mutually beneficial inequalities of valuation. Yeah.
So it's funny because when I hear inequality, I think of like inequality, like this person has a stronger position, so they're able to like take advantage of the other person. Right. But just to clarify, inequality is like this is worth more to me.
I mean inequality of valuation, meaning like I prefer this to that, you prefer that to this, so we're both better off. But actually no, that is, it's good you brought that up because that's a very common retort. I heard it a lot in my class discussions and stuff. But like what happens if this person's starving and then this person has all this money and it's like, oh, they can just extort. It's like, that it doesn't mean that like the range in which the prices forms is indeterminate. For a theoretician, like I can't say as an economist, as an economic theorist, like what the price of a liter of water will be. All we know is if you did the thing, you preferred drinking the water to not dying, right? So we can have discussions about like why was that person in such a vulnerable position in the first place, whether by their fault or not their fault, or whatever. What could be done around them institutionally. That's a perfectly fair conversation, but irrelevant to economic theory per se.
So economics seems to be more neutral then.
It is, yeah. So the general idea is it's neutral to your value. So this was what Mises always said. He said, I cannot tell a man that he should drink water instead of wine. I can only say that if I were in his position, I would not do the same. But it's simply saying if you do this, then you preferred what you did to alternatives you could have done. We could just say, so it doesn't say you. The ethics is a different component. So that's kind of where the sciences can be demarcated. Yeah. Okay. But that doesn't mean you have to be completely oblivious to it. It just means within economics per se, those other features are just incidental. It's not essential to what economics is. And this is kind of where philosophy comes into, because Menger himself was very influenced by Aristotle and like scholastic philosophy, which was brought through Germany by like Franz Brentano, I believe. But anyway, there's a long history there. And so he was really getting down to the essences of phenomena. Like and which is what I was interested in, which is why I was so drawn to this approach. Yeah. Whereas a lot of other people, they kind of aren't interested in that, or they kind of deny it. I can't represent the different philosophical schools that well, but it's kind of like a realist school versus a nominalist school, and these kind of issues where other people aren't so interested in the essence. They say, oh, we can never understand the essences of things, so let's just deal with this world of correlations and stuff, which is what I said from the beginning. You really can't do. You have to get down as much as you can. So that's why I was so drawn to this Menger-Mises approach, this Austrian approach to economics. That's why I teach it so much and I advocate for it so much, because I think it's really the key to like making the world better. Like if people understood this, the world would be better.
Well, it just seems so, as you're explaining these concepts, and I had read or maybe watched. Sorry, when I say read, a lot of times I saw it on YouTube or heard it on a podcast.
You read the caption, yeah.
You know, so like when I say Japan, I actually mean Tokyo. Right?
Yeah.
But when I say I read something, a lot of times I heard it on a podcast or saw it on a YouTube video or something. But I had heard this thing about the broken window. Mm-hmm. And I thought, well, you know, yeah, that means people spend money. There's an old story of a guy, and it's from like one of those positive thinking books of the customer who comes into the tire shop or the gas station and says like, oh, it's raining. Isn't that terrible? And the owner says, no, that's a good thing. Because when it rains, the mud dissolves and then the nails come out and then people drive over nails and they need new tires.
Right.
And I thought, wow, that's, you know, he's got like a rose-colored glasses. He's looking at like, you know, and then they buy more tires, and then I buy clothes for my kids, and then it was the whole thing about the window.
Yeah, exactly.
And how
like the circular flow of
spending.
spending.
Starts off that circular flow of spending. But how would they have been if they hadn't popped their tire at 60 miles an hour on the freeway? They might have been in a much better place.
So this is a key too. Is like some people benefit from everything. Someone's like so it's not the case that like everybody is worse off in the near term. Mises had this concept called like the long run well-being, meaning like eventually you would have been, even the tire shop owner would have been better off eventually, just in material prosperity terms, if these tires weren't being, but it wouldn't be so immediate. So like for a tire shop guy, he's better off relative to everyone else. He's getting the cash first, right? So he is better off than other people in a relative sense, right? So Mises tried to say, look, like, yeah, that's true, and that's why you always have to be careful when you look at policies, like who's actually benefiting from this policy, right? But in the long run, because exchange is positive sum, because everyone's better off on voluntary exchange, right? Over some amount of time, we don't know how long the amount of time. And actually, this long run, short run distinction is not so important to Austrians, but just eventually, let's say, you know. Just preserving your capital stock, preserving your wealth today, and building off of it will always be better off for everybody than attacking each other, even if there's one king of the heap of the trash heap later. You know, it's just a relative thing for them that I'll be richer than they would have been. You know.
So I had a list of questions and some things to understand that kind of might help frame the conversation a little bit too. Is a few things that words that we use every single day. Like money. Does economics explain money? Yeah. Well, what is money?
It's sort of a matter of definition, but again, this gets to this essential versus, you know. So I can represent the Austrian view of money, and I can even indicate some other views that I think are wrong, and I can explain why I think they're wrong. But the Austrian definition of money, which is basically just a normal definition of money, is the commonly used medium of exchange. Meaning, if you know, a medium of exchange, meaning like. Instead of trading directly like apples for oranges, you trade apples for gold, gold for oranges. So the gold in that case is the media of exchange. The exchange goes through the medium, you know. So that's the concept of the medium of exchange. Money itself. So this gets into like economic theory deeply, but Mises kind of clarified Menger's approach, and he called the new unified science of economics called like praxeology, the science of human action, which is a little broader than economics narrowly, like the action in the money-using economy, but praxeology is just the science of human action. So it's the implications of the structure of human action, meaning you use means to achieve ends. So medium of exchange in praxeology is a very rigorous, definite concept. We can analytically say, yes, this was a medium of exchange in this circumstance because you traded through it. You didn't the thing you traded for first, you didn't use or consume, you traded it again. So we can define that as medium of exchange, right? Money though is looser. Money there's some judgment involved with what's money. So like for example, like is the Japanese yen money? Where we are, yes, because you can just walk anywhere you want, right? If you're in New York City, is Japanese yen money? Probably not, because you can't just walk to any store and you can't use it, right? Is cryptocurrency of any sort, is that money here? Well, you can go online and you can, you know, you use services and you can, but I mean. It's kind of a judgment, not really, right? Because you can't just walk to stores.
That's true.
We go to the Bitcoin Cash meetup in Tokyo, but there's quite a few stores that we use it at. But come on, you can't go to most restaurants today and use it.
That's true.
So I think when you're being fair, you would just judge it to say no, like right now, yen is the only money in this geographic region, but it's also very contextual and specific. It's not so pure as saying medium of exchange. It's like you know what I mean. So there's wiggle room about like what is a money at a time, but conceptually we can say money is the generally accepted medium of exchange in a given place at a given time. So cows were money in ancient Greece, and seashells were money in certain societies, but it's all just contextual. But it's not an intrinsic characteristic of the good to be money. It's only what humans use it for.
I just finished reading Empire of the Summer Moon. It was about the Comanches and the people settling like Texas, and at the time, horses were a medium of exchange. Right.
Yep. So a lot of people think, the money must be durable, divisible, portable, fungible, this kind of thing. It's like, sure, those features definitely are beneficial to something being money, but those aren't the definitions of money per se. It's just like incidental empirical features that happen to be useful. Like I'm not. There's no denying that they're useful at all. That these things make a good money. They tend to in history. Like we can be logical and say, in history we've seen that, right? But per se, it doesn't really matter. Like if people all just kind of go nuts from our modern point of view and just want to trade like literally like sand, and they're just like bottling up sand, even though there's so much of it, for some reason, if they want to trade it, whatever. Like this is that value neutrality. Like we can't. They're not wrong to do it. We just would think it's kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
But anything could be money if it's scarce and if it's demanded by people and treated as such. So that's where that subjective valuation element always comes back to that. It always comes back to how humans perceive the world, how they value objects relative to each other, and then how they exchange accordingly to that. And that's really just the foundation of everything.
Okay.
So money, the same way, gets traced back to those subjective valuations. Nothing special. It's nothing that Menger wrote essays about money. He was a kind of an expert on monetary theory at the time, and Mises continued that specialty. And Menger wrote about the origin of money, saying like, where did money even come from? Because the common view then and now, Menger was writing in the late 1700s, early 1800s, and the common view was money was just created by the government. They just said, let there be money, and then suddenly there's money, right? And today people say, because there was tax. They spent the money out, and then they tax it back, and that gives the money value, whatever. Yeah. And Menger, even back then, said, no. Like people must intellectually grasp a medium of exchange first. You have to understand the concept of trading through something else. Because we don't know, because like the historical record, we don't know what these earliest humans did, right? Yeah. But we have to imagine that like they were just trading this for this, trading things, right? And then apple for orange, or this for that. But then somebody or many people, who knows like exactly the amount of people and who first, but they kind of woke up. They're like, whoa, I can, like it's hard for me to get this thing I want because the guy who has what I want doesn't want what I have. So let's say I want like a nice shiny new sword, but I've got a bunch of eggs, and like the guy doesn't like eggs. So it's like, what are you gonna do? Like he's the only blacksmith in the town. How am I gonna get the sword, right? But it's like, hey, what he does want is he wants a horse. So I can go trade these eggs for a horse. I can get a crap load of eggs and then trade for a horse, and then he wants that horse for the sword. I can do that. So even intellectually grasping this is a big first step, right? So what Menger is arguing is that like it has to come from an individual value judgment first to say, I want this, and I'm demanding this to be used as a medium of exchange. And then money again is just the generally accepted one. So it's just medium of exchange that's scaled up.
So if we were to use fiat currency in that situation where, okay, I have eggs, this guy has a horse, this guy has a sword. If we just use fiat currency, then in that case, then I can just go buy the sword.
So this is part of the Menger Mises kind of origin of money story, where the fiat money, like it could have been the case that people for some reason valued paper for like ornamental use or whatever, but that isn't what happened. What happened was people got gold and silver, because gold and silver had actual like use and look pretty and all this stuff.
They're rare.
Sure,
they're supposed to be.
And then they're durable, divisible, portable, blah 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 blah, right?
Okay.
So it just whether or not anyone likes it. Gold and silver happened to be world monies forever, basically, wherever they were, since a certain amount of time, right? But over time, governments, this story is told really well in this little pamphlet Rothbard wrote. It's free on Mises.org online. It's called "What Has Government Done to Our Money?" And he goes through the history of like it's a very brief. It's written for like intermediates or like advanced beginners, kind of, and he explains over time. So you had gold and silver as money. And then what governments did is they defined their national monetary unit in terms of weights of gold and silver. So they literally just say like an ounce of gold is worth this amount of our paper. But that doesn't mean that it just means that they are defining it that way, and that's what those trade for on in banks and stuff, right? But by some legal exchange. But then over time, even that connection slips because it's beneficial to someone to make money first. If you had a money printer and only you, you understand you would be really well off compared to everyone else,
yeah.
right? Yeah, because the prices in the whole economy don't change first. You would be the first one spending on the old price before all the prices adjust to the new quantity of money, right? So governments, of course, or anybody really, but governments happen to have this legal privilege in our
press,
society where they say, hey, like, wouldn't it be great? We could finance our wars if we could just print our own money, because then they don't have to worry about taking resources from the economy. So the way wars were fought before fiat currency was you had to literally just like conscript people or like do stuff. You had to pay for stuff. You
had to raise an army. You had to
you had to bid away those resources from what they would have been used for, right? But if you're just printing up cash, then it's like, hey, I can just print up more and bid away all the resources, right? Like it's easy, right? So I'm getting into their heads. This is a bit psychologizing, right? Like why? But you can understand why it's very appealing to governments to take over this monetary function, right? So Menger and Mises are saying, no, like the origin of money wasn't just government slapping down paper and being like, you're using this now. It was people gradually awakening step by step to this benefit of using indirect exchange. And then over time, as people use indirect exchange, those goods that were used indirectly get more and more value and demand in a sense, because people are willing to spend more by definition of people. So if I didn't know that the blacksmith with the sword wanted the horse, maybe I wouldn't have wanted the horse. So by me even demanding the horse, I'm driving the price up over time. So as more and more people, as more people see what's being used as the medium, more and more people demand it as the medium. So eventually there's just like 1, 2, or 3. So generally in history it was gold and silver, and then due to a lot of funny business with the way governments set exchange ratios, silver fell out, because they were setting a definite ratio between gold and silver. But the issue is when production of gold or silver would change, or when demand of gold or silver would change, that ratio that the government declared would no longer be the correct ratio, right? So then if the silver you're holding is worth more than it's fetching according to the government defined exchange ratio, then you're just going to hold on to the silver. You'll only use the gold. So then over time, people were only using the gold because of the mismatch in the... So if the government let it be, we don't know if silver would or would not have stayed as a currency. A lot of people, especially in like crypto space, they have this narrative that like silver was naturally demonetized. It's actually not true. It was unnaturally demonetized, but that doesn't mean it would not have been demonetized. It could have been. Yeah. We just don't know because we didn't see that we didn't see the history play out. It just stopped when government messed up. And they didn't mess up from their point of view, but from a value neutral angle, they basically caused silver to stop being used as money. But then over time, now gold is money. But then suddenly, Roosevelt makes gold illegal, and then they brought back this kind of like quasi gold standard thing, but only foreign governments could exchange for like large amounts of bullion. So there was this loose, tenuous tie to gold, and and then that just collapsed for various reasons that weren't the natural result of having gold as the money. This is all just government meddling. And this Rothbard pamphlet would be helpful to understand this. But yeah, so today we have fiat currency. So this gets to your point. So today, like they are money for sure. Like it's not that we can say, Japanese yen is not money because, hey, I'm a good Austrian and like I know that it's not gold, but no, like anything could be money if it's demanded and treated as such by people, right? That's really what it comes down to. But historically, we can trace that back. Would paper yen have been money without gold or silver? Probably not, but we can't say for sure. But like most likely not, right? So that's kind of how to deal with that situation. Yeah.
Okay. So, what is inflation?
Yeah. So this is a deeper question than you imagine. Maybe you do imagine because you hear the way that the word recession keeps getting redefined and everything. Yeah. So inflation's another one of these words that just keeps getting redefined over time. And Mises makes this point clearly, I think in Human Action, but elsewhere in his work, in his speeches and stuff, he always talked about the need to like return to the original definition and hold fast to the original definition, because there's like concept loss as you keep changing the definition, right? Because as words change, the definition of words change. You're losing some of the implications of the old word. So originally, or at least before, I don't know the first use ever in the world, but at some point and for a long time, inflation meant an increase in the money supply, basically.
That makes sense.
Rothbard defined it as an increase in money supply over specie reserves. So there are different ways to define this. This gets into the weeds and stuff. But if you just imagine, let's say there's a gold standard, there's gold, use gold as money, and then there's banknotes that represent gold, just saying, hey, this is worth 1 ounce of gold, and then I could just trade with you, but we could always just run back to the bank and get the gold back, right? If the bank makes more of those notes, then there is corresponding quantity of gold. So if there's notes for 10,000 ounces of gold, but there's only 9,900 ounces of gold, then we would say that was inflation in the Rothbardian definition. Mises had a slightly different definition earlier in his writing, and I forget exactly how he defines it in Human Action. But anyway, there are different ways to define it. But basically, it's either the increase in money, period, or increase in money above specie reserves. Pick your poison between those, right? So from there, though, people started saying, no, inflation is when prices go up across the board.
That's what I was
right?
going to say. That's
today,
like the
people generally think this, right? Yeah. As I learned a few days ago, even this is out of favor apparently now. So Mises objected to that second definition that it's just prices going up, because no, that's the symptom of inflation, of the original inflation, right? So if everybody suddenly thinks, oh no, inflation is only when prices go up, it kind of masks the cause. You're like, well, why are prices going up? And that's what's going on today, right? People are wondering, oh, what's causing it? Is it this? Is it this? Is it this? And it's like, well, look, prices go up for. It can go up for a few reasons. So either the supply of stuff just shrunk, which could have been the case recently because we had lockdowns, we have geopolitical turmoil going on, right?
Supply chain issues.
So that could be an element, right? But that tends to be sector specific. It will tend to be. But anyway, this is all empirical kind of incidental stuff, right? Or it could be that the demand for goods went up, so people are spending more money. So previously they were holding on to more money, they were saving more, they were in their wallets under the mattress, or they're just spending more, so then prices are going up. And that's not from money inflation. That's just simply price going up because people's demand for goods went up and their demand for cash balance went down.
And it might make sense that if we're coming out of a lockdown and people are going out and spending more money, that we have that money chasing fewer goods because of the supply chain.
Right. But there's also much more money in people's pockets than before, right? Because we're getting these stimmy checks, the stimulus checks, right? So it's true. All these. That's why we can't just say there's one factor, right? But we do know when you increase the quantity of money, like definitionally, then the prices will be higher than they otherwise would have been. This is where this counterfactual comes in. This is why the counterfactual is so key, right? Because what economists will do today is they're all obsessed with econometric testing and everything, right? So they say, oh, well, when the money supply increased by 10%, prices didn't increase. So that means, haha, you old-fashioned economists, you're totally wrong. You're doctrinaire, old-fashioned, and you're just off. You're not empirical. You're not scientific because you're not measuring changes. It's like, hold on, but we don't know exactly what's going on in the meantime. So was it the case that people wanted to hold more money? So maybe all this new money that went out, if every single person did nothing with it, prices would not have risen, right? If everybody got their stimulus check and just shredded the cash, right? Of course, prices wouldn't have risen, right? It was not effective. It was not effective. It didn't go out there. It wasn't spent, right? But if they hold it, who knows how long they're going to hold it? So maybe they hold on to it, and then they spend it a year later, and then suddenly then you see the prices rising. But by then it's a year later. So then are people going to empirically connect? Oh, it was that stimulus a year ago, and then they just happen to decide all uniformly for some reason in our thought experiment right now that they're all spending it a year later. Or was it the supply chain issue? Or was it this? Or was that? There's so many things, and there's so much room for different stories going on, right? Yeah. So that's why, for the Austrian perspective, you really have to drill down to what can we know for sure. And then how do we use that to interpret the world as it exists? So I know for sure, I can argue with as sure as I can know anything, that when you increase the quantity of money, prices will be higher than they would have been otherwise, leaving everything else constant, which is not, of course, the way the world works, because everything doesn't stay constant, which is the problem, right? Which is why some people hate this kind of reasoning, because they say, oh, well, it's useless then, because what are you saying? It's like, no, it's useful because it tells you if you don't want higher prices, then don't pump out more money, because pumping out more money per se doesn't help anything. It helps the people who get it first, for sure, right? But having more money isn't useful because the price will just adjust to how much money you have, right? So if you have $100 and you want to buy lunch, you'll spend whatever. If you have $1,000, then and everyone has $1,000, and when they had 100 before, then the lunch will just cost more. The cost will just be driven up, right?
The restaurants will clue in and say, "Hey, these guys all have $1,000 in their pocket."
And also people will be willing to bid more for and the supply chain, throughout the whole supply chain. So when they're it's the matching between the quantity of money out there, the demands of people, and the quantity of stuff out there at the time, and you're just it's called Mises called it the money relation, the demand for and supply of money. And that's what determines the height of the purchasing power of money. So when you increase the supply, you're increasing it's the same as any demand and supply analysis would work, right? Same thing. But that analysis itself, people don't understand, is counterfactual. So people think like, oh, if you increase supply, like price will definitely go up. It's like it'll be higher than it would have been, but it could be that other factors are pushing other things differently, right? So where things shake out in the real world, that takes, it's a matter of judgment. Mises says historical judgment. Whereas theoretically, all we know is that prices would have been lower, all else equal, if new money wasn't pumped in, right? There's no social net benefit to more money, as there's social net benefit to more goods, as long as people demand them, right? But having more money per se, leaving aside non-monetary use of the money, right? It only helps out the first receivers at the expense of later receivers. So some people benefit, some people are hurt. But it doesn't make us richer to have more paper, right? And this is kind of a key insight that a lot of modern people don't get, and it's causing a lot of trouble in the world, basically. Because it's inconvenient to have this kind of truth, right? that you're not better off with more money in the world.
But there are people right now thinking, I wish I hadn't heard that segment. Like,
No, it's definitely it's a double-edged sword to learn this kind of stuff, because then you see what's going on in the world and you get kind of sad. You know, a lot of my heroes, you know, like Menger and Mises's professor Eugen von Bavaria. He was the finance minister in Austro-Hungarian Empire for a while. He's even on one of the Austrian shillings today. His face, you know. So he was kind of a big deal. But and he was the one who really criticized the Marxism as a system really deeply. And he kind of very exhaustively in the late 1800s. But these guys, they were all very depressed because they were watching their glorious pre-World War I society just dissolve in front of their eyes from bad policies. So they basically traced. They said, look, there's going to be a war because people aren't cooperating anymore. There's no the trade is being stunted. Bad ideologies are in the world. So there's some parallel to today, you know, where if people there's a expression, and I'm not sure to what degree it's apocryphal and who exactly said it. Sometimes it's ascribed to Bastiat, the guy I mentioned before. Okay. But the saying is, if goods don't cross borders, soldiers will. Meaning when you trade, you're both better off, right? But if you're not going to trade, hey, why not just take what that guy's got? Because hey, I'm not going to get it anyway, and it looks pretty good over there, right? I can just take it, and I got more than I had before, minus the expense of the war, but but
wasn't there I've heard this said many ways. I'm going to get it wrong, but wasn't there somebody said once that two countries who have a McDonald's never end up going to war?
I think there is some kind of saying like that, and it's roughly the same idea, right? Where so it's once you're so integrated, it's tough, and it's ironic because with this current conflict in Russia, the McDonald's left, right?
Yeah.
so I want but they did have but anyway, there's stuff to be said for that, and of course a lot of people respond being like, well, there's wars and blah blah blah. That was a false premise that if you just increase internationalization, and there's stuff going on there. It's complicated, for sure, but for sure we can say, which is logically when you're trading with somebody and you're benefiting from their existence, and you're producing on your plot of land and I'm producing on my plot of land and we're trading, we're less likely to be at each other's throats because we're benefiting from each other. And this was one of Mises' key insights, which maybe is worth talking about. He generalized what David Ricardo had written. As I said, Mises wasn't. He liked the classical economists. He's not saying, "Oh, I'm everything's new," and these guys are stupid. He's no, they were amazing for their time, and he's building off of them, right? So Ricardo, probably James Mill, but James Mill is John Stuart Mill's father. Anyway, he was Ricardo's real intellectual behind Ricardo. But I don't know the history deeply. So either Ricardo or James Mill or both came up with this concept of comparative advantage, which you probably learned in your intro econ, the one or two you probably took.
Learned and forgot.
Yeah. So the general idea is just that just because one person is better off at producing in every line of production, there's still a benefit to trading in a relative sense. Because maybe I'm relatively more efficient at producing this. So I can produce more of this per unit of time if I specialize in it, and I let you produce the other thing. Even if I could have produced more of the thing you produce in the amount of time we're working with, it's still better off for me if I just work at what I'm comparatively best at in this relative efficiency sense. And I let you do what you're relatively better than me at, even if you're absolutely worse off in every sense, right? And then we exchange from there. So we end up with more on net than we would have had if we didn't specialize in that way, right? So Mises points out in Human Action and in other writings. Human Action is his magnum opus, by the way. It's free online, but it's not a beginner text. It's an advanced text. So you got to work up to it. But it's 900 pages, and I recommend people really into what I'm talking about get there. They make a plan to get there eventually. But the core of his insight about comparative advantage, what he called the law of association, is that association, peaceful association, is always superior to conflict in terms of net gain. Of course, as I said, maybe someone could be a little bit better off in the short run by like cheating and stealing or whatever. But in the long run, or eventually, let's say, cooperation is what makes society possible, and what makes wealth possible. What makes our society today possible was cooperation, not conflict, right? So once you kind of grasp this, then you're like, okay, that's if it didn't work that way. Mises points out, or he argues, he says. If it wasn't the case that cooperation was net beneficial, then people would not have you would have died off, literally. Like there would have been a selection mechanism in which the people who cooperated were worse off than the people who didn't cooperate. You would have just died off. We'd cooperate and we'd be getting poorer and poorer, and then there would be no human society anymore. So literally, human society is built on this like metaphysical truth, this like necessary truth in the world which Ricardo identified, this comparative advantage, but blown up to every facet of life. That it's always better to associate with each other peacefully. As individual people, or as groups, as we choose to form ourselves, right? It's always superior in a prosperity sense, in a comfort sense, than war. In terms of whatever you want to get out of the cooperation, whatever it is you want to get out of it, it's better off to cooperate. And then mathematically, it's like unless you are exactly equal in every way, which we're not, right? Or if every piece of land is exactly the same, which it's not. There's all these like kind of things where it's like if all these things were the case, then the benefits of exchange wouldn't be so high. But in our world today, luckily, we have a vast diversity of things, which is ironic. So like I'm saying diversity is a strength, but in a very different way than most people say, right? So a lot of people think inequality is really horrible, right? But what I'm saying, the implication of what I'm saying is actually inequality is like the foundation of society. Because if there wasn't inequality, there's no reason to even interact, really.
That's true.
So
if I'm happy with the amount of water I have and I don't care about fish, then no reason to talk to each other.
We can just everyone gets what they want eventually in some way. I mean, we can imagine things we'll never get just because we have imaginations or whatever. But if everyone's peaceful and if everyone trades and if we have cooperation like this, especially across international boundaries, and we're just going to be richer over time and over time. That's the history of our world.
If we look at after World War II and after the Korean and Vietnam Wars, Japan, the remarkable growth of Japan's economy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Came through cooperation.
Yes.
Americans buying Japanese cars, and Japanese not buying very many American cars, but
but they were saving a lot, and saving is a key to progress later. So yeah,
absolutely. And so we see how cooperation. I mean, I have heard this too. War is good for the economy. Right. I think it's good for a couple companies.
Sure. Yeah, about 5 or so, and then with some satellite hangers on, around the Beltway,
and a couple lobbyists,
Sure, yeah.
But I think cooperation, if and I know a tiny bit about the supply chain for automobiles because I worked in the automobile industry, done some litigation in automobiles, and all the different companies and suppliers that are connected to a car company. And if I buy a car, I'm supporting the salesperson, the store, the car lot, the company that built it, and then every single part maker. And as a little kid, I used to think that Toyota made every single part in that car.
Oh yeah,
just a little kid's.
I think most people think
way
that.
Of thinking, right?
Until you experience it, you probably.
And then you learn about what is an OEM, what is a tier 1, what's a tier 2, and all these companies, and something like 17,000 to 20,000 parts go into a car. So if I'm buying a car, I'm supporting all these different people, and even the person who put it on a ship to go to America, right? And then the person who the captain of the ship and all the workers, dock workers who offload it, all that stuff. I'm supporting all those people. And so buying a car, you're, going back to, breaking the window, but I need the car.
Yeah, we can get back to that because some listeners might think, but aren't you making the point that it's so good? And what you said is totally true, but let's look at it from the other way, saying could that car have even been made without that cooperation, right? So this was Leonard Reed. He was the president of FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education.
Okay.
He wrote this really famous pamphlet. It was made famous by Milton Friedman in like Free to Choose, but Leonard Reed wrote this pamphlet it's called I Pencil, and it's from the point of view of a pencil, talking about all around the world that goes into the creation of like a number 2 pencil, and it's just so bafflingly complex that like we look at a pencil as a kid and we're just like, it's a pencil. Somebody just like somebody just made the pencil. That's all it was, right? But how this pencil came together, like I can't do justice to the story now, but I recommend people read it. It's free online. It's easy to find. It's very short, very easy to read, and just the idea that like all these people cooperating in so many parts of the world. And this is what Adam Smith talked about at the beginning of Wealth of Nations, where he says, it's not we don't even know each other. We don't know who the people who made the car that you're talking about. They don't know each other. All these different companies. I mean, maybe some sales reps know each other, or whatever. But that's, but no one knows each other. No one really cares. They don't need to care about each other. They can if they want, right? But there's no need for like altruism for the market to have these benefits. And by market, I just mean peaceful voluntary exchange, right? So all you need to do is you want better off for you, and somehow even by that. And this is why the Germans who Menger was fighting with in his time were, it's the cheap dollar philosophy. It's just, you just want selfish philosophy. It's like, well, look, like actually, in some sense of defining that word, it doesn't mean you can't be a nice person. You can't look out for everyone. Yeah. And actually, you're better equipped to look out for other people if you're richer, right? But even if you're not, even if you're Scrooge, right, you're still making everyone better off, actually, right? Leaving aside, like, if he flogs people or whatever, that's nasty and should be disciplined or whatever.
Well, I think we're just talking about, like, the most normal people. There's always going to be extremes.
Well, but even the extremes, as long as they're not physically violent, even if they're just, like, nasty people that you never want to talk to, if they're just peaceful, they're still making everyone better off by being their miserly self. So maybe this is a good point to get to savings, because you were talking about, the way the supply chain works, and by you spending on the car, it works this way, right? So people would say, so that's proof that you need saving, or saving's bad. Sorry, that savings leaks out. So if you don't save, then all those people would go out of business, because like if technically speaking, all those people were already paid before the car was produced, right? Technically, so really it's just the car manufacturer at that point. Toyota, I think, was the example, right? So if no one buys their car, they had already paid out all those operating expenses, and then it's just like, oh crap, and they go under. So it could be the case that those other people in the supply chain have other contracts, of other, or maybe they don't. So you're right. There could be this ripple effect where, like, you not buying could cause unemployment or whatever. However, that's just your choice as a consumer, like what to buy, right? And everyone in the economy has to adjust to consumer demand. Like what otherwise we can just freeze the economy. We have horse and buggies forever, kind of thing. If we're just going to freeze something so nobody can ever get unemployed. But so savings now. So people say, savings is bad for this reason, right? No, it's like savings. Money in your pocket, money under your mattress, money in the bank account is serving the essential function of money, basically. So people think money is only good when it's actually changing the hands. Money is useful to us also when it's literally sitting there waiting to be exchanged hands. So when money sits in your bank vault, it's not actually serving you much in like that kind of sense of like, I'm not consuming anything at that moment, right? So it's a choice to postpone your consumption till later, right? However, you'll consume eventually. Someone will consume eventually. That's the point of everything. Consumption by definition is just like getting the satisfaction. And this is something key that Menger and Mises like brought into economics too, this idea of subjective satisfaction, not just this physical relation between things. It's like, no, the human valuational elements with the physical elements, the combination of the two, right? So when you save, you're deferring your own consumption. You're permitting what's called like a lower time preference. So meaning you're saving now and you're signaling your desire to consume later. So the social rate of time preference will fall, and then people will that will kind of ripple through the economy in various ways through the structure of production, through this production structure, and the structure will lengthen, meaning people will produce more for the future rather than today. Because by you saving, the prices will be lower than they would have been. Because if you did spend out there, you'd be driving up the prices. You'd be willing to spend. By not spending, there's like a depressing effect on present prices, right? But you're signaling future consumption demand. No one knows exactly when. That's the point of entrepreneurs, to guess like when is that person going to want to. They can read forecasts. They can read whatever. They can just make their guesses. They can look at spending habits or any data that they can use. It's not for us to say sitting here, right? So saving has a very vital function. Without saving, there is no investment. Investment is a subset of saving, right? But even the saving that isn't like literally lent out, even that saving is useful because it's holding prices back. It's signaling willingness to consume later. It's just simply a choice. It's a choice of the person at one moment to say, I don't want to consume right now. And that's the same as your choice to consume this rather than that. It's saying rather this quantity of money than that. Money is just a good, just like every other goods. So it just happens to be the good that's the general medium of exchange.
If we go back to what we were saying, like I value this water more than I value the fish or whatever. Right now I value the money more
than anything else I could have used, anything else I could have imagined, any of these other consumer goods, right? So money is not a consumer good, money qua money. So that's where, but it's still a good. So the principles of economics, as we were saying, the supply and demand analysis, that applies to money just as much to other goods. It just so happens that money is this general medium of exchange which literally connects, everything is priced in terms of money, whereas horses aren't priced in cows nowadays.
No,
maybe they were sometime, right? But nowadays we can't just check the Wall Street Journal and see the price of the barter ratio of horse to cow, right? But we can see money to everything, whatever the money unit is that we're looking at, right? So money is unique in that sense. It's sui generis is the term Mises uses. But the laws of economics apply. Right? It's not so. A lot of economists, even monetary economists, have just treated money as this like fantastical thing, which just kind of like appears. It's like bestowed from the heavens,
it's magical,
and we have to preserve its unit value. But actually, no. The unit value is just whatever we choose to spend it for at the time. It's just the quantity of. That's why the quantity matters. It's this definite quantity. So it's saying if I spend this amount of cash in my pocket for this amount of gummies at the convenience or this amount of batteries or whatever, that's just my choice at that moment. And I could choose not to in the next moment or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that. So the price could change according to how we value it and according to how the shop owner thinks we will pay. There's nothing wrong with that. But people have this like fantastical metaphysical view of money that like it must be stable. Like the money unit, the $1 must equal this for a long time, and we have to tamper with everything around us to try to achieve this goal. Which by tampering all around, that's making things much worse for various reasons. It's setting in motion boom bust cycles. It's obstructing entrepreneurs' own calculations. So when you keep messing with money supply and messing with interest rates, it's messing with business owners' ability to like even guess the future. It's like, hey, I'm spending now, but like, will I have to spend much more later? Like maybe I'll earn more. If you know inflation's coming, you can be like, hey, I gotta go in production quickly now because then the what's coming later will be worth more in nominal terms, but in real terms, not really, because then the money you're earning is worth less. So you're like, hey, what am I even going to do at this point? Because you have to kind of guess what the inflation rate is going to be, right? Oh, and actually, I didn't finish up with the inflation even. So as I said, even that second definition I offered about inflation, about saying it's the increase in the price level. Price level is not a good term anyway, but they use it. They imagine that you can aggregate all the prices in the economy. Whereas from what I'm telling you, it's just individual prices for individual goods. Prices are just this more than that, right? But these mathematical economists, they think you can just average out using these very arbitrary measurement tools. They can say, oh, you can create this number, that's the price level, the CPI that today. And there's inflation.
Do people just want to simplify things? Is that?
Oh yeah, like. If you believe that like data is power, if you have this view that like we need to measure things and that's how we learn, that's how science works, that's how if you have that view already, then it's like the next step is like, well, how do we get the data? so then you have to gather it, so you have to come up with some way. So that's why there was all this work done in the early 1900s in American economics, and I think abroad too. I just happen to know because Mises was responding to this about making index numbers, like making like the CPI, and then they were trying to create a scientific approach. And Mises is like, there is no any one as good as any other one. Which means they're all equally useless or all equally useful, depending on it just depends. What do you want to do with it, right? Yeah. It's just like the number means whatever it means based on how you did it. But where you go from there is not obvious. Like it depends on the situation. So it's not. It is the case that you can get some insight out of these calculations. Like you can say like, whoa, 8% rise in CPI. Yeah, probably is price. Even if there's funny business in how they calculate it and how they change it. Like, most likely they're like, okay, yeah, there's probably something to it, right? With that said, is it like super precise and scientific? Like not really. It's just these people with their clipboards measuring stuff and changing the way they adjust it based on the quality considerations, which is super arbitrary, right? But nowadays, so leaving that aside, even that issue with measuring prices, right? Now people are saying, no, it's the change in the growth rate in the money. So it's not just money being increased. It's like changes in the increase in it, right? So it's like saying, so imagine you have like 10% rise. So I forget. I think it was change in price inflation, not the money. So it's saying change in the change of prices. So it's like the acceleration of the prices, not just the velocity, right? So it's saying like you have to measure like, okay, if the CPI, let's say, is changing 3% year to year, and then it changes 4%. Well, that's inflation, but it wasn't inflation before, right? That kind of thing, right? So this was new to me actually, but I was told by friends that like, yeah, this was kind of like in the water for a while, and people were doing this definition.
Wow, it's kind of like saying like, officer, I was not speeding. The speed limit's 65. I was going 80. But I was going 80 for a long time. Yeah.
I wasn't changing from 80. Yeah,
I didn't change from 80 to 85.
Well, but then in that case, the speed limit would have to be like, you can't have that rate of change between 65 and 80. That's there's something like that. But yeah.
Well, no, I sped a long time ago.
Yeah. I sped before. Now I'm not speeding. I'm just maintaining.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yes, but that was new to me like a few days ago. So I wouldn't have even said this if we recorded, like a week ago. But I've only heard that from one podcast so far. But I don't read like popular literature. I'm really like into the academic angle, right?
Okay.
So I haven't. I'm mostly into my world, and I see other stuff when there's criticisms, when there's stuff to criticize, and there's stuff to learn from, and this kind of thing. But I haven't seen this definition being so in use. But apparently it's out there in the mainstream. I don't know. I mean, people can look for it, I guess.
I guess colloquially, well, first of all, the newspaper definition, the colloquial definition of inflation, I've learned is already wrong. And now
there might be some
inflation might now be the change in inflation.
Yeah, it's like no worries if it's like 10% change in price over a year. It's like as long as it doesn't change from 10%, you're good.
So we're like 2 or 3 definitions removed away from the original definition.
Right. Which would just simply be more money.
And so pretty much like the word's going to be meaningless.
Eventually, yeah, and you can see how there's this information loss. Like they get more and more complicated to understand it, and it becomes more and more like, from your point of view, you're like, yeah, I don't get economics. Like this stuff's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Who am I? I don't know economics, right? And then even for me, I'm like, it's probably purposeful. It's probably just like it's the way things go. It's this language destruction.
Yeah.
That actually the president of the Mises Institute. I know you're familiar with the Mises Institute, right? So I was a summer fellow there. I'm very involved. I write some articles for their website. He's been doing this work recently. He published a paper about the importance of language, and so he's kind of taking up this theme that Mises was serious about, and Austrians have been serious about, but we're not as serious as we could be. We're not really out there fighting about this.
But language is a naturally evolving, beautiful thing.
Well,
right?
it is. That's kind of his point. But unfortunately, nowadays it's not being natural. It's very imposed. The way these and other things too. Things that are outside economics. You can see how words are starting to change.
And being sarcastic.
Yeah. No.
So there's a really great bit by George Carlin, and I was a huge fan of George Carlin. And the funny thing is, when I was a kid, he was a radical, and people were like, "Oh, that guy's crazy."
Yeah.
Now, as an adult,
like
I
a Joe
look
Rogan
back.
type guy,
and now I look back, I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
So one of my favorite bits by him or sketches, he actually describes himself as an essayist who delivered his content on stage, and his critique on society. And one is called The American Dream, or The Owners of the Country. The other one is where he talks about how words change. And he starts with shell shock and gets to PTSD and how it got more syllables, but it got softer.
Yeah.
And it got nicer.
Yes, yeah.
And so it seems like the same things happen in economics.
It's a similar. So whether it's a natural process in a sense or whether it's imposed, I don't know. That's a different conversation. I don't actually have a strong opinion about these. Like it could just be people in good faith or just like trying to be more scientific, and their view is kind of messed up of science in my opinion.
Sure.
But that could be the case. I don't mean to ascribe like horrible motives, but it is helpful for people who it's helpful to dumb down other people because like it becomes impossible to understand what's going on.
And is it possible? I always try to leave room. So I'm a lawyer trained in the U.S. and there's a lot of criticism and valid criticism about lawyers.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, like, people are human and they make mistakes, and there have been very high profile trials on TV. I'm not going to mention any of them, but if you think back to like 2022, what were the big trials on TV right now, right? And people say like, "Oh, that lawyer was so stupid. Like, why did he even ask that question?" Well, a lot of times they come in with a list of questions, and halfway through, the witness goes off the track.
Yeah.
But they're trying to come back to the original line of questioning. They ask a question that has nothing to do with the conversation anymore. But it's like they came in with a game plan, but the witness went off track. So
as Mike Tyson said, everyone's got a plan to get punched in the face.
Exactly, right? And every lawyer's got a great line of questioning until they get a witness on the stand. Right? And I just made that up. But I sometimes wonder, lawyers are human, economists are human.
Yeah.
People make mistakes. I wonder sometimes if these policies that turn out so badly sometimes, is it just because people are human and we mess up? Or is it nefarious? Is it like, should we ascribe it to like malevolence or
Well, this is a matter of historical judgment. It's a matter of you got to dive through the literature available to you at the time, who's doing what, and you got to hunt through. So Rothbard himself, he had a similar story as like the Carlin example you mentioned.
Yeah.
He wrote another short pamphlet, which I'll also recommend. Besides the previous one was What Has Government Done to Our Money? This one is called Economic Depressions, Their Cause and Cure. Okay. And this is more about the boom-bust cycle, which we haven't really gotten into, but it's related to money. It's about the expansion of what Mises called fiduciary media, meaning the unbacked paper money.
Okay.
So he called it credit, but credit's not like you can have natural credit, just like investment credit, but this is like credit that isn't backed up by like real saving, and that's what causes the cyclical like
more
boom
like
and bust
letters
in the
of
economy.
credit, or
no, like literally just like new money, new USD that isn't backed by actual real saving. Yeah.
It's just poof out of nowhere.
So if that goes into investment purposes first, that causes like this intertemporal issue in the structure of production, and then the stuff about interest rates. It's a long. There's a whole week of my lecture. I go into this.
Describing the messing up the space-time continuum. Or
It basically is that. Yeah, it's basically more or less like similar. Yeah.
Sorry, I use really dumb terms because
it's actually not the wrong way to even think of it, because it messes up, as I talked about time preference before, about how you prefer sooner or later. It messes up the correspondence between the actual investment activity and that preference of consumers, right?
Mm.
So there's, anyway, without getting into detail, there's this boom bust cycle, and Rothbard begins this pamphlet, Economic Depressions, Their Cause and Cure, by pointing out that we used to have depressions, and then we had recessions, and then we had downturns. And now so as we know, 0809, we call it the recession. We don't call it the Great Depression anymore, right?
That's right.
And are we ever going to have a depression again? Probably not. Not within the current political structure that we imagine, right?
I heard somebody made a real stretch and called it the Great Recession.
Oh yeah, the 0809 one. Yeah. That's usually what people say. But then nowadays people aren't. Now people are saying no. Even it's not even a recession now. Even though GDP decreased 2 quarters in a row, or whatever. It's not a recession. I don't really care. I don't care how you use the word. It's just interesting to point out that it always gets softer, but you lose. It's like, no worries, everything we're doing is fine. It's just temporary. It's a temporary blip. Transitory, exactly. Transitory inflation. So yeah.
That word drives me crazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was one of those weasel words. Like, no worries, it's transitory. And, oops, it wasn't. Sorry, we're all wrong. And
it was transitory for 2 years. I mean,
I'm sure you've seen those memes of Powell's face, and it's like, oh, no worries, things are great. Oh, things are overheating. We got to do this. Oh, actually, things are really bad. Oh no, don't worry, it's transitory. Oh no, and it's like, don't worry, you still own your home. It's like, don't worry, you don't own your home, but you're happy. It's like the last one, right? It just goes from everything's fine to okay, you're starving, but but at least you'll go to heaven. You're okay. That was the last one, right? So that's basically the path that we're on, unfortunately, and it's hard to, as you were saying about it, whether or not you ascribe whatever, it's a case-by-case basis, I guess. And you'd have to really talk about the individual person and the individual. But something to consider is the systematic incentives at play, right? So when you're a lawyer, you want to represent your client, even if you know they're an SOB and you're like, oh yeah, this person's horrible. And even if you're he could be lying, but hey, you're getting paid for this. And you can either not take the client or you should represent the client, right? At that point, right?
Well, and also the thing is, even if a person, and I'm not going to make a judgment whether they're guilty or not, but you also have to make sure that their constitutional rights are protected.
Sure, yeah.
So if the state comes in and says, State versus Tracy, we're going to bring in some evidence, and I'll say, wait, that's hearsay. You cannot bring that evidence in. If they had railroaded my client, and there was no lawyer there to protect that client, that they could get railroaded big time.
Yeah.
So a lot of times the lawyer's there, even if the person is so guilty that there's video of it, there's a confession, there's everything, right? You're still there to protect their constitutional rights. So
but then imagine if those rights were different, right? So then it's a different playground, right? It's a different but I mean, to be fair, you have to believe in the rights, so the people have to uphold them, but so the words on the paper or whatever, it's what what we act according to them, but they're not meaningful. I don't mean to say that it's nothing, but of course when we see the way the government works, as you were saying, maybe they want to railroad that client for whatever reason.
Sure. Well, there's always the
for
one,
better or worse,
And not to take it too far off into legal stuff. And by the way, I don't give legal advice on this podcast ever. I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. I always say,
have no advice to give about laws.
And where was I going with that?
About constitutional rights.
Yes. Yeah. The lawyer's there to protect their constitutional rights and make sure that the process is followed.
That's almost a nice sounding example of what I was trying to get at. So imagine you're working for today. Let's say most PhD economists who graduate are employed by the Federal Reserve. I don't know exactly how. I don't know. Maybe most is maybe it's less than 50% or something. I forget the exact number, right? Okay. But it's a huge amount of them.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of them. It's not 50. I mean, a lot of them go to academia or a lot of them go to private sector or whatever. Okay. But a lot of them go. I don't know how many. It's a lot. When you look at the stat, you're like, well, it's a lot. So when you get hired by the Federal Reserve, what is the chance that you are going to be a vocal critic of the Federal Reserve? So first of all, what is the chance that you would have gone to work for them in the first place? if you think that this is an institution of great destruction in society, right? Are you going to want to go work for this institution that didn't exist before 1913, was created under very shady circumstances, does this stuff with the money supply, which I've been explaining partly in our conversation, what it does, who it benefits. It benefits first receivers, which is the people in the banks and everything, right?
Sure. And then once you leave, too, you probably have a non-defamation clause where you cannot talk about your former employer and disparage your former employer.
I have no idea how
right?
it works,
So
but in any case, even assuming the best of them, and a lot of these people are just normal people, just doing, they believe in what they're doing. They believe that, I mean, what you learn in most PhD programs, not mine, because I go to George Mason, it's a little unique. I went there for a reason, to study with my professors. I'll shout out like Pete Badke, Chris Coyne, these kind of guys. They're like Austrians like me. So I went there for a reason, because I knew I could get through the program. And they're my dissertation committee now. But otherwise, most of the programs, they're just going to jam you full of math for 3-4 years, make you do some econometric paper to get out. And most of these people were on like the top universities. They were on the Council of Economic Advisors at some point, or they aspired to be or something, right? So you can, let's not even say, let's say they truly believe what they're doing. They don't understand what I'm saying, or they don't think I'm right. Let's say that they don't think anything I said is right. They think that no, the government must intervene and to do this and that, and that they have arguments and whatever. They're going to gravitate towards those positions. They're saying, "Oh, I'm going to make a difference in this organization." Whereas for me, it's like, no, you make a difference by closing it up, by closing shop and letting them go to productive jobs, right? So why would I? Unless I'm just a kind of craven and I just want some short-term security. Because working for the government is a good way to just be safe for a while, right? But that's not my interest. So I'm going to be fighting against that in a sense. I'm going to be arguing against it. I'm going to be doing stuff like this, explaining why I think this is a huge damage to our society, right? What's going on in Japan right now is this monetary policy issue on steroids for 40 years, I
see down the street from me, there's a huge tower mansion. Tower mansion is basically condominiums, right? Like 20, 25 stories of condominiums. Beautiful, beautiful lobby. I was near my office today, and there's this huge, huge development going up. And I don't know where the money comes from. Japan's been in a recession for like 25, 30 years.
Yeah, it's been it's been sputtering.
And I don't see a lot of growth, but I'm not reading the the Nikkei Shimbun every day. But it's just, I don't know where all this building's coming from.
Well, how you measure growth is important too, and because you could see increases in GDP over some amount of time. And you're like, oh, no worries, guys. Like, our policies are fine because, like, it would... And
growing.
It's interesting because then they're always going to say it would have been worse if we didn't do that. So that they admit the counterfactual when it's convenient, right? So Keynesians always say, if we didn't intervene at this time, it would have been so horrible. Look at our forecasts, our various projections, right? So you can see GDP sputtering or increases or whatever over some amount of time, but what's actually happening within the economy? So it's not just that there's like consumption and like capital and that saving. It's like no, like there's stuff going on within those aggregates. So a lot of modern economists, they only deal with these aggregate terms, like this add up stuff. They're like, and then they just like correlate these big terms at the top, right? But actually, what's going on in this, what we call the structure of production, in the supply chain, what's going on there? So it could be the case that for 20 to 30 years, Japan's been getting poorer in a sense, but it's not noticeable in those aggregate terms. You just notice later when suddenly production is like, oh, everything's messed up eventually, and you weren't saving. You were eating into your saving, but you didn't even know it because it wasn't showing up into your theoretical outlook, right? So you can literally just consume your capital. You can just have less allocated towards productive investment in the future, and more people are spending now, and then suddenly people derogatorily refer to the Austrian theory of the business cycle as the hangover theory. They say, oh, well, it's like you have fun partying, and then you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, I'm hungover, and I'm like, it's kind of true. There's something to it, the metaphor, where it's like, yeah, you can see yourself doing well. And I'm not saying it's exactly what's going on here. There's a lot of things going on. A lot of it's just institutional stickiness because the way Japanese law, like the way labor is so regulated here, and the way everything is just so like static. The way zombie companies and everything. So it's just like nothing's really happening, and there's pumping in money, but it's not even like going into the economy very much. Recently, it has been a little bit, and people are freaking out over like tiny, much less than abroad, but compared to historical, recent price deflation, it's like a big deal. But they've been doing this crazy monetary policy for so long, and the regulations are so intense and taxation's so high that it's just kind of this static society that it's hard to disentangle everything. And I'm not going to pretend to have one answer that's easy, But it could be the case. It very well could be the case that the people around us today here think they're much richer than they are in real terms, right? So we're seeing this crazy devaluation now, right? And it could be the case that actually for maybe the last 10 years or so, people were acting as if it was like 2000 or 2002, which already then was not as good as 82 or whatever, which is in the bubble. But actually, what if things right now are not as rosy as people even think, even knowing they're not good, right?
Yeah.
And maybe within a few years, people will realize like, oh, we have to really save and invest again because like there's a problem going on. You know, we need to like unleash entrepreneurial energy, and we can't just like prevent people from getting fired and prevent anyone from taking any risk and that kind of thing, right? And as you were saying before, I'm going to research more about Japanese economic history. I'm not sure with what I'm saying exactly, but basically, like Japan coming out of World War II, I mean, it was like destroyed, you know, as you know. And it was basically just like, all right, let's start over. And then they were very industrious people, as we know, and they save a lot even now. You know,
and also very little distraction. I mean, there was this sense, and I talked to people who were here during that time or that were growing up during that time, and there was this common sense of like, or a sense between the people of, we have to build this country, we have to repair, we have to do something, and we have to work hard. And of course, Japanese very hardworking, very smart, very industrious, but there was this common theme of we're all in this together, and that went on for several decades. But then they got rich. This is me not being an economist, but they got rich. They got high-speed internet. They all got smartphones. And then the younger people are just
they got McDonald's.
They got McDonald's. So, but then the younger people, I don't see younger people as motivated as when I was here in the 90s. Younger people in the 90s were studying English. They're traveling abroad. They're interested in foreign countries and learning languages and working overseas and stuff. These days, you talk to younger people and they're like, nah, I don't really care to travel.
Such apathy, right? Everywhere. You just feel it everywhere. You just feel this apathy.
You know, not a lot of people getting married, not many people having kids. Right. I don't know if that's because they can get everything they want on the internet and they don't need to find the opposite sex. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
it's case by case. I think a lot of this, like, this is where I blame these kind of Keynesian policies, because if there's like, let's say 2%, this is what they target, these policies, they target 2%. And it's not just Keynesians, it's other, like even like monetarists and stuff. They have this view of like, oh, you should have the stable growth rate, right, over time. It's predictable growth rate, right? But when you do that, when you save today, you have to keep spending now. You can't. You're like literally. If you expect this, you know in the future that like what I save today, what I earn today. Like sure, what you earn in the future might be more to adjust for the inflation in the future, but today you earn today bucks, right? So if you want to spend on today prices, then you should spend it today or soon, right? But if you know that 15 years from now, let's say you're 21, you graduate from college, and you get your first job, and you get paid horrible wages here for your first job. I went through it for a few months, and I wasn't a fan. But you get paid really low wages, monthly wages, right? And it's kind of this. It's almost this like tiered system where like, oh, you get this degree, you get this wage starting out, and like it almost doesn't matter like where you go. If it's like a Japanese company and it's like that's it, right? I'm sure there's some variation, but like not that much, right? And if you know that like deep down, whether it's like conscious or not, it's like, look, you can't even afford to like plan for kids, like because like you can't have like a wife stay at home. Because my understanding is a lot of like Japanese girls, they all go to college, but like they kind of just like want to like they haven't really bought into the whole like, oh, we should have a dual income family thing. They're like, no, like when you have a kid, you just kind of want to stay home, right?
It's like, there's lots of videos to back this up. There's lots of videos on YouTube where people go around in the street in Tokyo and ask young women,
like, what do you want to do?
What do you want to do? Do you want to have a career? Do you want to have a family? Right. And the majority of them will say, I want a family. Yeah,
if you marry and if you start having kids, then you want to stay with the kid, right? So that's hard to do when the man's earning, however very much, little. Right? Yeah, well, it's like $2,000 for listeners. It's like around like $2,000 US a month for like that starting salary, Yep. And Tokyo, and if you live in Tokyo, it's not cheap. I mean, if you live abroad, there's probably more kids per people out there. Like when I went to Gunma like a month or two ago, which is north of Tokyo for listeners abroad. I saw way more happy running kids around than I do in Tokyo. In Tokyo, you see them, but it's obvious that it's like bankers' wives kind of thing. It's very obvious to me. That's like this is like the winners of the Tokyo system, like are having kids here. Yeah?
This neighborhood here, very metropolitan people, a lot of embassies around here, a lot of foreign companies around here. You see the license plate that has the foreign mark on it, right? Driven by somebody working in an embassy, whatever.
Yeah, I always walk by all the time. I see the tinted windows.
Yep.
You can't
see those, and then you see a lot of wealthy people around here. There's a couple international schools. One across the street, there's an international school. and two, there's an elementary school down the street and another international
they're all
school
over
down the street, right?
our area. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, you see the winners.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The people here who went to Todai or KO,
Right.
they got the really
They can afford
sweet
to,
job.
and that's kind of the key is what I'm getting at. It's like they can literally afford it. So, I mean, people who choose not to, that's their choice. Everyone has their own values. That's what we're saying. It's a subjective value for everything, right? But even if you do want that, it's very hard, right?
Yeah.
So given that this is just the situation, and I don't think most Japanese youth like grasp like economic policy the way I've been describing it and the consequences, but you just know that like, oh, things are not good. Like my life is probably worse than my parents were, kind of. It's just like, or it's the same, or like, whatever.
Yeah.
Like you know what your future will be like already.
Exactly.
There's not much like dynamism or hope or expectation. Nope. It's just like, like life is comfortable, and it is. That's why I'm here. And that's why it's still nice here. I don't mean to like to say it's not nice or anything, but it's just not very dynamic. It's not. People don't have aspirations, or they don't seem to want to even anymore. They kind of just gave up,
Very predictable.
Yeah.
Very predictable. And also it's expensive to raise children here.
Yeah, it's very expensive.
I mean, if you look at, and this is the crazy thing with the birth rate declining in Japan, you would think that education would get cheaper, but here's what happened, and I don't want to be all doom and gloom, but what happened with the daycare situation in Japan is that as the birth rate declined, daycares closed.
Yeah.
Which means that there were fewer daycares to take care of kids, which means the prices went up.
Right.
Which to me, from an American standpoint, is like there are fewer kids going to daycare, the price should go down. But fewer kids go to daycare, they close down daycare.
The supply crashed,
The supply crashed. And so the ones that are left, it's hard to get in.
Yeah.
There are women who cannot go back to work because their child cannot get into daycare. There are no spaces. And so the prices are high. You can't always get in. Yeah. But then education's expensive. Uniform's expensive. That little backpack they have is expensive. Juku, to send your kid to a cram school because the school doesn't teach what you need to know to get into college or university. To pass the test, you got to pass the test to get into university. And so you go to school and it's basically all-day daycare. And then after school, you go to a cram school, or a juku, they call it, to learn how to pass the test to get into university. And if you don't get into a good university, you don't get a good job. And I read a book in the 90s, this gentleman, he worked at a trading company or bank or something, and he retired very wealthy. And he said, it blows my mind to think, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, it blows my mind to think that my whole life was decided by a series of tests when I was 16 years old.
Right. Yeah. So, I'll be avoiding that with my new daughter. So, I'm going to definitely avoid that whole track, basically. Yep. But, it's dispiriting if you're young. Like, I'm a visiting fellow at a university in Shibuya right now. So that's my official affiliation in Japan, because my PhD is in the U.S. right now. But, when I'm at the school, I just see I go to the library, but I go to the bottom floor so I can have a drink. I got scolded for having a drink in the library.
Oh boy!
But so I stay at the ground floor where it's not inside the library. It's like the library building, but I'm in like the lounge where people can talk or whatever. Yeah. And I just see half of the students. These are all college age Japanese students at the school just passed out. Right? There's just no I don't think it's hard for me to imagine they're studying that hard. Where I think it's just pure disinterest and apathy. It's at everything, right? And half of them are just passed out,
a lot of times college or university is 4 years of partying. Yeah. Because once you get in, you're pretty much guaranteed to graduate, and you don't really have to study or turn in homework or finals. Like when I was in college, if you don't pass the final, you don't pass the class, right?
Right.
There's homework, a midterm, and a final. That and then percentage that is taken to make your grade. But here, there are only a few majors where you actually have to study. Now, psychology is one of them.
Really? Interesting.
You have to actually turn in a thesis. You have to actually have done some homework and some groundwork, some footwork. But a lot of times, college is 4 years of partying. And a lot of times, kids don't even go to classes.
Yeah.
So you could see, it could be that they've been partying all night and they're just crashing in the cafeteria because,
I have no idea. I don't go up to them and ask, but it's I've heard from Japanese professors who are, there are some who are kind of similar to me, the way I view economics and everything. And they say, don't expect too much. You just get a lot of blank stares, if any stares. A blank stare would be a good thing, right? Otherwise, it's mostly just drooped heads and everything.
Wow.
But yeah, but even in the U.S., you know, like I've been teaching online for over a year now because I'm here, you know, I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
But even there, you know, I get 2 or 3 students a semester generally per class that are interested. Because I just say, hey, I have an open Zoom policy. You know, based on the time difference, if we can arrange it, happy to talk about anything. It could be about the content in the class or anything really.
Yeah.
Just if it sparks some interest in you, like because I think most students aren't really getting much personalized attention in colleges anymore. If they ever did, you know, I'm not saying it's worse than it used to be. Maybe it's better than it used to be, but in general, it seems like they're more interested in just like charting their own path. So I just say like, hey, come to me, and like actually most of the students who come to me for advice, they tend to like not even continue in economics, which is I'm a bad sales pitch for econ, right? But I say they tell me their dreams, and I'm like, hey, like if you graduate with an econ degree, you can do a lot of stuff for sure, but like the natural path is like either you do the PhD in econ and you continue on for like working at the Fed, or you work as a professor like me. I'm going to work as a professor, or you just like go work for like a bank or whatever. But you should if you're going to do that, you should probably like minor in math. Then you should probably do math, and like having econ isn't really that required. You should just do math, in my opinion, finance and math, right? So in general, I'm like, look, like I think it's important every human learns the kind of economics we've been talking about.
Yeah.
But you can get that out of books, and like look, I want students and I want people to take econ, but I want them to do it based on their own life goal and what they're passionate about. So I support more, my vision for the future education system is more of like a Greek, like scholastic environment, you know, where there's kind of like lecturers, and then like there's different schools of thought, and you kind of, the lecturers are kind of around the academy, and this kind of thing, and only the really interested people will come, and they'll just pay the tuition one-on-one, and maybe there'll be some different model for like, you know, when you publish, there'll be some decentralized like crypto-based payment model for the people interested. Will pay like, you could pay 10 cents to read my article or something in crypto, you know, because it's so cheap and easy, right? But like right now the way the academic system is, it works. It's like so captured by like a few big companies, and you know, it's these scams about the textbooks and everything, right? So I don't assign these textbooks to my students because I'm like, look, like half of you don't want to be here. I don't want to torture you and make you pay like $100 for like this textbook that you're gonna throw away or sell. It's just feeding the machine more. So I say, look, like I usually assign free PDFs from Mises.org, Mises Institute website, like Mises and Menger and Rothbard and these kind of thinkers, I don't even make them read. I give them what I think they should learn in the lecture. Because I say like students will hate, if they're interested, they'll read. But I'm going to tell them everything that's most important, like the kind of stuff I'm telling you about, the way money works, and you know, the way inflation works, this kind of the business cycles. I teach like very basic stuff, value theory and this kind of things, how science works, like the counterfactual basis.
Well, that's very important to learn how to think.
Right. So I spend more time on that, and I test them based on what I want. Like if they remember 5 things from my class, like these are the 5 things I want them to remember, and I make sure that those things are tested repeatedly. Over, you know, because repetition helps them learn, right?
Absolutely.
But I don't torture with like all this busy work and all sorts of payment stuff, and because professors benefit in a sense because they get kind of faded by these publishing companies. You know, they can give you free copies of textbooks and everything, and you know, this kind of stuff. It's not so horrible. I don't mean to like make it out to be like the worst. It's not like pharma industry or whatever. You know, it's like a quarter there or something. You know, the way it works. You know,
but there's a lot of funny biz in the.
And if you wanted to read, if I publish some of my articles might be in a paywalled journal, and you'd have to pay like $50+ for like one article as a non-academic. If you're an academic, it's this little like, you know, cartel where like the school library pays for the membership, but there's kind of this system where like then these publishing companies. So I've contributed a bunch of these like book chapters in these volumes, and then the volumes are just pumped out, and like it almost works out for me in a sense because they're willing to just publish on like almost anything. So they're willing to publish my heterodox, unorthodox, modern version of economics, right? But which I think is right, but you know, it's not dominant right now in academia. But they're just publishing whatever because they don't really care because the libraries just buy them automatically. They have a rolling subscription, something like this, right? So the libraries just stock these $100 books, but they don't expect any person to buy them. But the result of that is that if there is good stuff in there, it's tough for you to even see it, right?
That's true.
So I'm imagining this future where like even if I'm, let's say, a university professor officially as my title, my publication is actually more like a free or pay to play model, like for customer facing. The customer isn't just like the parents of international students who are willing to pay full tuition, who aren't paying in-state tuition, right? Right now, that's the customer kind of. Or the customer's really just like donors, like past, you know. But
have you ever looked at anything like Substack?
Yeah, in the future, for sure. Yeah. I mean, right now I'm focusing on my own, like getting through the PhD program. But actually, I've been publishing on Mises.org. I've published a couple articles in kind of crypto monetary theory stuff. And everything's free on that website. So even the PDFs are free and everything. So they were like a pioneer in my space among like making stuff accessible to everybody, right?
What's an essay or what's something you've written that people should start with?
Well, don't start with me. Start with other people. that's the best advice I have, because I haven't.
You're too humble.
The article I wrote about like basics in Austrian economics, it's going to appear in one of those volumes that I mentioned. So chances are people listening aren't going to find that. It's in one of these like Austrian school, or it's in like alternative political theories or something like that. You know, one of these textbooks with like 10 chapters that have.
Austrian economics is labeled like an alternative theory or something?
Oh, yeah. But I mean, it's always been heterodox in a sense, but it's just the way things have been. I mean, just because it's popular doesn't mean it's right. So and just because, and vice versa. And it goes both ways. You know,
it goes with music too. Like just because it's popular doesn't mean it's good.
Well, So like, there's even more subjectivity there. And like maybe in the future we can have like an objective theory of music. I doubt it, but anyway.
Yeah, I doubt it.
I mean, there are elements for sure that we can like decide on, that like 99% of people agree that like this structure is like more appealing than this structure, and you can kind of generalize. But with economics, I mean, what I'm concerned with, and again, this gets this Aristotelian essentialist bent that you know, more about like, I do think there is like the truth. In quotes and caps and whatever, right? I'm not like a postmodernist in that sense, right? I don't think it's like
truth is all subjective,
right. I mean,
my truth. I have my truth.
I think the truth in economics is that values are subjective. So that's where there's a subjective element for sure, right? So one man's trash is another man's treasure.
Sure,
but that doesn't mean that truth is. It just means that has nothing to do with truth in a sense. Like I'm talking about like metaphysical structure of the universe type of thing. Cause and effect relationships. That's really the key. The very first sentence of Menger's Principles of Economics book, like the one that founded the Austrian school, was all things are subject to the law of cause and effect. This principle knows no exception, right? So, but this is like a big claim. Like people deny this. Like modern scientists, like some of them don't believe this.
Really?
Like empiricists like don't believe this. Like they say no, that like you can never see a cause. Like him say you can't see. Like there's controversies and difficulties, and I'm probably not representing perfectly, but basically there's a view that like no, there's no such causation. It's just like mutual determination, and there's like everything goes. It's just a kind of a mess and everything. Whereas the Misesian, Mengerian, Austrian view is like no, we can literally mentally conceive of the cause-effect relations conceptually. What I've been describing about like what a medium exchange is, when you increase the supply of that, what's the counterfactual result of that, right?
Yeah.
This to me is truth, in quotes, right?
Okay.
But that's kind of, if you want to get the basics, getting back to your question about like where should people start? Besides the Hazlitt book, which again is a little bit outdated in the examples, not in the reasoning at all. Like I think you can read that profitably, and if you search online, you can find it for free, and I can send you a PDF to put in like show notes or something. But besides that book, recently the Mises Institute has published a new primer by Per Bylund. He's a professor in Oklahoma. I think it's Oklahoma State University. I hope I'm not mistaking that. He's a Swedish guy, but he's working in the U.S. and he's a fellow and a professor at Mises University, the place in the summer where in Auburn, Alabama, where if interested high school students or college students are interested, they can go for a week in July, and there's even a master's program there now that's run by another former student of Rothbard and Hoppe at UNLV, Joe Becker. So yeah, so maybe your brother knew
might have been in the class.
Could have been in the class, yeah. So they now run a master's program, and they're working on getting various accreditations and stuff. And but you can do that. Whether it's good for your life, it's up to you. It's like what do you want out of your life, and do you want to spend 2 years? It's not easy, but it's cheap. Because donors help subsidize it, right?
Wow.
So if you're just kind of a layman and you really want a structured program and you don't want to spend a lot, but you're willing to put in the time, and that's kind of a key. You have to really be interested, right?
Yeah.
You can do this master's program, but if you don't want to do that, just read free PDFs. Read like the primers I mentioned. Per Bylund wrote one. I think it's just called like Austrian Economics, a primer, or it's like The Economy, a primer. It's very simple. It's a very simple title. So if you just look on Mises.org, search Per Bylund, like the primer, you'll find it, right?
Mises.org. How do you spell Mises?
Mises.
Okay.
Yeah. And of
.org.
course, it's based on Ludwig von Mises, the guy I've been talking
Yeah.
about the whole time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was created in 1982 in his memory. He was dead
Okay.
by then, but his wife was still alive, and it made in his memory with a lot of some of
Okay.
his former colleagues. And
I mean, their YouTube videos are amazing.
yeah, and then they're getting upping their game more and more, and
Yeah.
and just for everybody. You know, it's this philosophy that really everyone needs to know this. You don't necessarily need a PhD degree, right? That's what I tell my own students. I'm like, look, like depending on what you want out of your life. If you want to be me, I fully support doing what I did.
Sure,
Right?
sure.
I recommend doing what I did. But if you don't, like, let's be real. Like, if you want to be a hairdresser and you just like your parents made you do a practical major. Econ isn't even the most practical major you could do. So then I have a real talk with them about that, you know? And I say, like,
Yeah.
look, you're going to be taking a lot of classes. Like, they like my class. And I say, my school, you're going to take more like me, but, like, there'll be repetition and, like, what you're going to get out of it based on your life. You should reconsider, like, maybe even taking, like, accounting is more practical in a sense. Because, like, if you're going to be a business owner, like, you need to know the current stuff, right?
Yeah.
It could be. I don't know. Everyone's different. And I always, listen to them and I think about their own plan, right? But yeah, so like look up that primer, look up those Rothbard books I mentioned. What has government done to our money? Economic depressions, their cause and cure. That's for like business cycle theory. There's all sorts of like short stuff that you can find online, like beginner stuff like that. But Bob Murphy, his name is Robert P. Murphy, like the full name, but his name is Bob Murphy. He wrote a textbook also published by Mises Institute called Lessons for the Young Economist. And that's also free online. It's
Wow.
for more like high school and earlier ages, like let's say like 6th grade to 10th grade range or so. That's the level. But nowadays, I use it sometimes anyway because like
Sure.
I just assume no one knows anything. And it's like they build
Yeah.
up step by step. So that's called Lessons for the Young Economist. And that's also a great like, it's literally structured like a textbook, but it's not written like a textbook. So it's structured like one, but it's like accessible, no math really, and it's just verbal. And then other than that, from there you would take it from there and just keep looking at recommended readings from there. But that would be a good start. And then when you eventually get to it, if you really are into what I'm talking about, this Austrian approach to economics, you'll eventually get to Mises' Human Action, which is like the masterpiece in our tradition.
Okay.
It was first published in 1949, but there's a 1998 version that's free on Mises.org called the Scholars Edition.
Why is everything free? This is amazing.
Because it's it's just the philosophy of education. So yeah.
Wow.
So that's why I recommend free stuff because like look like
Yeah.
if you don't know if you're going to be into it, like check it out, and then if you're into it, if you need structure, which I did, I needed the structure.
Yeah.
I was doing readings, but I would watch more videos or I'd listen to
Sure.
more podcasts, same as you're doing now, right? And I said, hey, if I want my future to be dealing with these ideas, I need some structure, I need some guidance. So I went to George Mason, and with some real pros, Pete Becky is like he's really like good at this kind of academic stuff. So I really learned from him and Chris Coyne, who himself was Pete Becky's student, and Chris Coyne's my dissertation advisor. So
Wow.
it's kind of we're like kind of like a family there in a sense,
Yeah.
everyone because it's a very unique place in a sense, and since Pete Becky has really like been at the program. His students have started to make programs also in the U.S. So Texas Tech University has a program with Ben Powell now. It's another good program for people. It's in Lubbock, Texas. If people like to be in that
Okay.
part of the world,
Yeah.
they can go there. And there's more programs springing up here and there that are available. But that's if you want to go the PhD route, which I did. I want this really professional training. For me, I treated this whole PhD experience as more like professional training.
Yeah,
Rather because like I already knew a lot. I already read these books for like 8 years or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was just a matter of like how do I write papers that get published? How do I network with academics? It's more of like a professional training. So
Yeah,
that's why if a student wants that, I tell them to do what I did, and depending on what they're interested in, go with these people or those people or that or that.
Okay.
And then for foreigners, I should say, for people who want to study in Europe, because the programs are different there, the PhD programs. So you don't have to do like my program in the U.S., I did like a master's on the way to the PhD.
Yeah.
I already had a master's before, so I doubled up with another master's just
Wow.
to get the PhD in the U.S.,
Okay.
But if you go to France, there's a professor named Guido Hulsmann. He's a German guy teaching in France. Many of his students are my close friends. They're excellent economists. He's also an expert in Mises' thought. If people want to go to an inexpensive, it's like government subsidized kind of French program,
Yeah.
I think it's in France. You need to have a master's in econ though. But I believe you can get the master's at the Mises Institute and then go to France if you want, right?
Wow.
But if you're in the U.S. and you want to do a traditional program and you want the traditional training, you can do like what I did and go to like George Mason or these kind of
Okay.
schools, right? So that tends to be the advice I'll give to people if they hear about economics and get so passionate. But even if you don't, just read some basic stuff. Read Hazlitt, read Rothbard, read Bastiat, read Menger. Menger's not that hard to read if you read the Principles of Economics. It's old, and Mises said it more developed, but not that much more developed. Like Menger had most of it there. Mises just added more meat to the bones and like fixed a couple things here and there, right? You can just read these for free online and become a smarter citizen.
Yeah.
And then go about your life in an educated way.
Yeah,
and then we started the conversation by you saying you're ignorant, but you won't be ignorant anymore. You can have an opinion and not be ignorant. So it's even better than being ignorant, which is even better than being ignorant and having an opinion, right? So yeah.
You know, when I was younger, I was ignorant with an opinion.
Sure, yeah. Everyone is. Me too. That's, yeah.
Now I'm just ignorant.
Right, yeah. That's what you generally grow into. You know, there's all sorts of expressions about that. You know, but then if you're interested in knowing more about what I've been talking about, then definitely just look at those resources. And people can email me too. So my school email, which you can email about this kind of stuff with questions, would be like KLAMBER7@gmu.edu. So that's my school email. So if you want to email me a question, a more personalized question, feel free, and I'd be happy to talk. I talk to past students all the time. I have a Zoom call for tonight with a student from a year ago.
Awesome.
I just keep on top of, as I said, like 2 or 3 person class, and that's over 20 years. I'll have an army of of like a lot of students, ex-students that are interested. So I just noticed that's the way to make it work. You have to meet people where they are, and like you can't drag people kicking and screaming to economic literacy. You have to try to inspire them through just saying this is important and this is why I love it, and then see if they like it.
I can definitely tell you're very passionate about it, because we could go on for hours, and I could listen to you for hours.
No, thanks.
I don't have a lot to say other than wow.
Well, at some point I'd have to just start giving my own lectures. You know, I'd have to get into philosophy of science and explain like this distinctive conception of science, you know, or talk about the boom bust cycle, this kind of thing. Or we didn't really get into alternative theories. I didn't really get to criticizing them, but you know, I think I always teach my students what I think is correct the first time.
Yeah.
And then later I explain there are other ways, and I try to be honest in my portrayal, but I also tell them this is why I think it's wrong. And I always say, like, feel free to contradict me. Yeah. But then, like, you know, for your sake, you should probably like come prepared. You know, don't just like, But I'm going to be friendly about it. But like, I've read this stuff a lot, so like, so don't just think just because you heard it on CNN, like, oh yeah, I can come up.
At least come armed.
Yeah. But I'm very happy always. Like I say, look on your exam, I ask these questions that might be open ended, but like you can give anything if the reasoning is tight. Like you're going to get a good grade. But with that said, you know, I feel it's a disservice if I don't teach what I think is right. Because a lot of teachers, most teachers, I don't know the percentage or whatever, you know, but a lot of people, even the ones I've talked to at my university, will be like, yeah, but it's bad to teach them something that maybe, like, for example, the next class they take won't be like that. And I'm like, well, sure, if you're in that kind of situation and like literally the school tells you like you must teach these things, okay, like that's your job. Sorry, that's like being a lawyer and dealing with a client or whatever. But when you're not, I think it's a disservice to not teach what you think is right, and then that gets back to my dream model of education, which is just like literally just like street corner preachers almost, you know, but maybe within a more dignified setting, but you know, but essentially the same type of thing is like you attract people as you merit the attraction basically. And it's worked out somewhat for me so far. You know, I only have a year of evidence or so, but students who those 2 or 3 per semester who really into it, they say, hey, like, tell me what you teach in the future. I'll always take your class. I'm like, hey, I'm just a student teacher. You know, I don't have much power and I don't have many different courses, but just getting that kind of feedback is really refreshing because it gives me some motivation to be like, hey, I'm 2 people at a time, 3 people at a time. Yeah. You never know what they're going to do next. And, you know, Menger couldn't have known that I was going to get inspired by his work or Mises, right? Yeah. They were depressed in their lifetimes, and they thought the world did end. Like 2 world wars were horrible in their lifetimes. Yeah. You know? Mises had to like literally flee Europe, you know, to New York, you know, and Menger just kind of went to a cottage and just lived out his life reading anthropology books and economics and just being sad because they were all wrong about everything and he was right. You know? So that knowing their historical experiences armed me to not expect too much day to day. It's more just like, you know, planting seeds and just nothing else you can really do. Like Mises even said this in his memoirs, which were very dour memoirs because he wrote it as he's on the boat fleeing Europe, you know, in World War II. And he basically wrote like, I faced the same quandary that my professors, you know, Menger and Bauer faced, but I decided to keep fighting because what else could I do?
Whoa.
And I think even like Jordan Peterson talked about that in one of his. He says like, look, like when you're feeling bad. It's fine to feel bad, but like, what else are you going to do with your life? Like, really, like, and that kind of hit home to me, independently of my own economic hero. So it's like, like, you do have a choice, and like, take your own agency back, and like, even if you don't expect anything good to happen, doing nothing will make it happen, right? So like, do your best. Just do your best and try. And
it's like that person who says like, I'm 50 years old. I'm thinking of going to college to get a degree in, art, but it's going to take 4 years. And the answer is like, I'm paraphrasing, like, well, how old are you going to be in 4 years? Whether you do it or whether you don't. Right. So might as well try to put something positive into the world. Right.
If what you're going to get out of the degree is good, and if you couldn't do it without the degree, for sure. Yeah. You shouldn't be held down by this idea of like, it's worthless. I'm worthless. Nothing's going to work. So just being willing to accept short term, like, as I said, my approach of economics is not dominant. It's not popular. Right. When it's admitted, it's like usually mocked among like the high rollers in the economics profession, the people who staff the government agencies and stuff, they laugh and poo-poo, and they don't really deeply understand, but they wouldn't, because the whole approach that you're taught economics nowadays for 100 years has been so messed up, from my opinion, that you wouldn't you even thinking this counterfactual way and this different philosophy of science way. It's like that you have to start there. You can't just start like with what is money. You have to like hold on. Like our understanding of what money is starts from like what is truth. Like what is something? What is a thing? Before you can know like what is a concept? How do concepts interact? What is causation? Right? This stuff matters, right? So that's why they kind of think it's crazy. They think it's like this scholastic thing, and it is because the historical tie can go back to Spanish scholastic monks. Like Catholic monks in like France and Spain and stuff, doing this kind of work, and kind of because they said, hey, like God made the world good, and we want to understand, like God endowed us with like a brain to understand the world, and it's our imperative, it's our duty to like understand the way things really are. And just wanting to know the way things really are is like the key. That's what Menger wanted. And that's why he turned to that approach too. Like, why are things the way they are? Yeah. And not just the way people say they are. Don't just stay at the level of like the names. Like get drill down more, and really like what is the essence of things? What is what is going on here? Like what is this? And
it takes some clarity of thought.
It's very hard, and a lot of people hate it because they're like, look, no one has answers, and like people have been talking about this forever. Philosophers have said all this stuff. We can go through all these different philosophies, and so let's just focus only on the measurable. And that's where this came from, right? But the issue is you can't get away from this. You can't get away from these fundamental questions. All you're doing is you're just not thinking of them, but implicitly you're right. You are these what we call it positivism. They are representing a metaphysical position, without admitting it, basically. Okay. So this whole view, and this is one of my hobby horses, and it was Mises as well. It was his final book was about logical positivism, about why it's wrong, and about the actual epistemological foundation of science, of economics. This view is like represented by like Karl Popper, and it's the kind of thing you hear often, and you've seen it even among our friend groups, where it's like, if something is not falsifiable, then it's not scientific. It's not a meaningful statement about the world, right? So saying a bachelor's unmarried male, that's fine, but that's just how you play with words. That's a tautology, right? They use this word tautology as a smear. Whereas what we're dealing with is science. We're doing experiment, and you can say, hey, if I increase the money supply, how does the price of eggs change? Yeah. And I can see with my eyes how the price of eggs change, right? Yeah. But the issue is, as we were going into earlier, is like it doesn't mean anything if you see the price. It means something, but you don't. To know what it means, you have to have a theoretical presupposition already. You have to know how things relate conceptually, right? To even know, like, okay, eggs are an economic good. Money is the general medium of exchange, and then when you we have to look historically. Did the demand for money increase? Did what happened? Right? You always have to go out and see what changed. But those concepts themselves are before the observation, right? They're true. Okay. They're true regardless. So, and Mises pointed out about positivism. He just simply said that statement itself, that something that is not falsifiable is not a scientific statement. That statement itself is not falsifiable. Right? so is that statement itself that only falsifiable statements are scientific? Is that falsifiable? In which case it's scientific, according to their own view, or is it non-falsifiable? In which case we can just let it aside, right? So it's a self-defeating proposition, right? But ironically, it's the dominant way of looking at the world today. So like this is the stuff I get really jazzed up about, this philosophy of science stuff, which gets out of raw economics and gets into philosophy, right? But it's all very important. You can't do science without philosophy, basically. You can, but like there's always philosophy going on behind what you're doing. So it's been unfortunate. There's been practical gains from this very increased specialization and hyper mathematization. Yeah. There have been gains in like physical sciences, like physics and chemistry and biology. There's been like we use computers and we have planes. Yeah. And we have all sorts of stuff. We can see those things, right? But people poo-poo economics because like, well, what are the gains? And they're right to do so because you can't just port that method into economics. The method of economics is philosophical. It's not experimental. You know.
Yeah, so we can see like we started with the Wright brothers, you know, got
they did this
jet
to
airplanes.
do this. Yeah,
now
yeah.
we have NASA and SpaceX going to the moon, going to Mars. But in economics, can we really see that progression, right?
Yeah, it's like we have human society, and then like we see
Yeah.
human society, we see humans doing this or that, and we see what we see in the world. But like, why did what we see in the world happen? Was it because the government was so benevolent and all wise and all knowing and all powerful that they produced this wealth, or was it just humans trading according to the law of association, according to private property in exchange for money? Right. So what was it? And there's no way to dispute that by looking into the world. You can only dispute that theoretically, right? Otherwise, people can just come up with any theory they want about anything, right?
Yeah.
And testing is meaningless. Like it's meaningless to test whether we both benefit from a voluntary exchange. Like by the meaning of the word, like what we're talking about, we both benefit, right?
Yeah. If we had a voluntary exchange,
then we both benefit.
Must have benefited.
But that's also not it's a tautology in a sense, but it's not meaningless. It's meaningful because benefiting is meaningful. Like what humans, like we're humans. We're living in a human world and we want human prosperity. Yeah. That's not it's not meaningless. Or it's not meaningless to say that we know that trade is better than no trade if you want prosperity. Yeah. That's a very meaningful statement, even though it's a tautology. So Mises says in Human Action, like, yes, all economic theorems are, quote, tautologies. That doesn't mean they're meaningless, right? So this is a completely distinct view of science than the modern, like, positivist approach, what it's called. It's a type of empiricism, you know, like where it's like only what you see is what matters, not you can't just sit in your armchair. And like Mises said, no, literally you could just sit in your armchair. Like, of course it helps to go out into the world.
Sure.
But like you could just sit in the armchair and like think of money. It's hard to do that. It's easier when you're in the world and you're trading with people, right? But everything that's true in economics, according to Mises and me and Menger and these people, you can just like sit in your armchair and like reason it out. Yeah.
Require an experiment, or doesn't?
No experiment. Yeah, it does require some empirical like assumptions that like there are a variety of things in the world. Like as I said, like the benefit of exchange occurs when there's no variety of things. Or like, for example, the economic laws dealing with money are irrelevant in a world where there's no money. Because like, hey, if there's no money, it doesn't matter what would happen if the money supply increased because there's no money. What's the difference, right? But that doesn't mean they're wrong. They're still true. So what I said about the counterfactual relationship between the quantity of money and the prices of goods, right? Yeah. The accurate to say is the purchasing power of money. You know, so the purchasing power of money will decrease the greater the supply of money, all else equal, right? That's true regardless of whether there's money. It's just fun to say. It's true, but it's meaningless because it's not sound in a world without money, but it's valid. It's a logically valid argument, but it's not sound because our world does not. Let's say it doesn't have money, in which case it's not really going to be much use to be like, hey, Crusoe, if you increase the money supply, the purchasing power will decrease counterfactually. Yeah. He's like, all right, I'm focused on catching fish, so see you later, right? But that doesn't mean it's wrong. So that gets into its truth, right? Like what is truth, and is it true before observation? And I say yes, right? Okay. So that's the key. But it's still in the world. It's still relevant to the factual empirical world, right? So it doesn't mean we're anti like world. We're not anti-empirical in a broad sense, but we're anti this empirical method of economic science, you know, and social sciences. So so there's plenty of threads to go off of there for interested listeners. But it's,
absolutely. So once again, Mises.org.
Mises.org is a place to see some of my works and all these free PDFs and all sorts of great writers. David Gordon has a lot of great stuff on this philosophy of science stuff. So you can look up David Gordon. He was a friend of Rothbard's. And then Rothbard himself wrote on this, and Hopper wrote on this as well. And there's all sorts of articles on philosophy of science stuff, very varying levels of. I recommend just Mises, to be honest, like to be the best statement. Mises is Human Action, Theory and History, and Ultimate Foundations of Economic Science. His last 3 major books are where he really gets into this philosophy of science stuff. But his followers since then have always talked about parts of it. And Guido Hulsmann, even the guy I mentioned as the professor in France, he's written some great articles on the counterfactual that are free on Mises.org. So you can just spend your whole year just like looking at PDFs there. And so like and then my university is George Mason, and but before I came to Japan full time, when I was still kind of before the COVID days, I was in the Hayek program there. So a lot of the professors that I associate with are in the Hayek program. So students can check that out if they're into that kind of thing.
And your email once again?
Yeah, I'll just get my school email. You can find my like page both on Mises.org and on Mercatus. And the Mercatus Center is where I get my like fellowship from my university. And you can see my profiles there, and you can see my email there. You can the contact me's are different because I have different like profiles in the 2 different the email for my academic stuff I tend to use is my George Mason University email address. It's like KLAMBER7@gmu.edu.
Okay.
So yeah, K Lambert, because my name is Karras Lambert. So it's K Lambert without the T, 7.
7.
For some reason, they gave me 7.
Sure.
Lucky number 7, I guess. Right?
I think for law school, I was like Green W56 or something.
Yeah. I still remember my undergrad one. I still use the code for things, but I can't say it because you can access
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
But that was my email address.
Yeah, same. Yeah. But
Yeah.
they use it for everything. They use it
Yep.
for
Yep.
Sure.
And then it was my student ID, I think.
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
But and I gave out a false one. That's not my real one.
Okay. I see. Yeah, I'm not even gonna say my real one.
No. And then do you do any other social media like Twitter?
I don't use those kind of things. Yeah, I just use. I mean, we talk on Telegram and stuff, and
Yeah.
I'll give a shout out to Session. It's like a very decentralized chatting
yeah.
app. It's not. There's still growing pains with how it works, but it's more the nature of the technology, and over time it's getting better. And we use it for our Bitcoin Cash stuff. So
Yep.
yeah, if you come down to Tokyo, you can come to our Bitcoin Cash meetups on Wednesdays. So I'll give a shout
Yep.
out to them and Big V, our organizer.
Yep.
I'll leave him anonymous for right now.
Yes. Just call him V.
Yeah, Big V, and they can reach out to me for info on that if they're in the Tokyo area or want to stop
Cool.
through, and if they're crypto people. But otherwise, I'm not on Facebook anymore, and might be tough otherwise. Email's the best, and otherwise just those kind of more private apps to varying degrees.
Yep.
That's what I'm using nowadays.
And those are more messaging, right? Like end-to-end
more
encryption.
messaging. Yeah. So if I get an email first, then we can talk on whatever. But yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right. And for this show, Weekly Fascination is on. I'll just put links in the show notes.
Cool. Yeah.
And just maybe shoot me an email or Telegram message. I can put some stuff in the show notes.
I can
as
send
well,
you
yeah.
the stuff we talked about, or at least
Awesome.
the major ones I talked about. I mentioned a bunch
Not
of things,
everything,
which would be a little too much, but yeah.
Part of the fun of listening to a podcast is to say like, hey, what did Karras say about that? What pamphlet should I read? And then go back and listen to it, and then they go look it up.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't think that. Sure, it's great to give show notes, but also like if people are really that interested, they're gonna pause,
I think so,
look it
yeah.
up,
Yeah.
and go for it.
Yeah.
So, hey man, thanks a million.
Yep.
Is
No,
there
thank you.
anything
Yeah,
else
it was
we're
fun.
forgetting, or anything you want to add?
No. Yeah, there's no.
I really appreciate it.
Covered a lot of stuff randomly in my haphazard style.
No, it was great.
Yeah,
And I think one thing that good thinking does for people is it gives them a springboard.
Mm-hmm.
People listen to something you say and say, I want to learn more about that.
Yeah, it matters, and there's a whole different approach to thinking. Even like, do you have foundational thinking that builds, or is it just like haphazard stuff, right? So Mises was very critical of like modern economics, which I am too. It's random, like labor economics, health economics, airline economics, developing economics. Like it's just like whatever, all these classes, right? But for the Austrian point of view, the Misesian point of view, it's like it's a unified science. You can't be good at like labor economics, whatever that means, without knowing economics. Like you need to know economics, and then it's just a special application to like labor issues or whatever. If you want to explain like why did employment go down or something, that's not a narrowly labor economics question. That's a broad economic question.
It's an economics
right?
question.
Yeah, you need to know. You can't be a specialist in economics. You have to be a generalist. So that's not popular nowadays. So that's why it's a little bit tougher to get these jobs, because they ask for like macroeconomists on banking only or whatever. It's like, hey, I can teach banking. I do all the time, but I don't look like a specialist in banking. I look like this generalist. So I just don't look as good as someone who like did their PhD with like the ex banking chair of the committee and published their everything books on this. It just looks different because the whole view of what science is, what economics is different. So that's kind of the uphill battle you face when you're like a paradigm away from the modern paradigm. Yeah. But as I said before, nothing to do but just keep going. And
Absolutely.
it's dispiriting sometimes, but it's also fun. You feel like you're doing something worthwhile if it's what you believe is true, which I do. So
and also like it's so taxing and so difficult and so burdensome to do something you don't believe in.
Yeah, that was what I believed.
I mean,
I discovered that myself. I had a moment when I was in college, I believe. It might have even been high school, where I thought to myself, hey, it seems to be the case that if I like kind of compromise, and if I don't really like exert myself in my own brain, I could like get along fine without like doing much work. I could just like, I was like addicted to video games as a kid. So I'm like, I could just like play games and like just do whatever and like punch it in 9 to 5. Okay. Yeah. And I thought like, well, do I really respect myself for that? And I was like, no, like I'm gonna, and I decided like, even if it's inconvenient or uncomfortable or whatever, I'm just gonna hold to what I believe is true. Chips fall where they may, and of course I'm open to like revising what I think is true. I'm always trying to learn more. But with that said, at any given moment, if it's not what I believe, I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna like compromise my integrity. It's just not. It's not worth it to me. I can't really look at myself, and it's not the path I wanted to go down. So I made that choice somewhat early, even before I learned about this economic stuff. And I think that's part of why I went down this journey. When you really care about the truth, you don't care about what's fashionable or what's popular. You just you zero in. And
you don't
that's
care
what
about
happened,
what's expedient.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, it matters all else equal. If you can be truthful and expedient, that's nice.
Sure,
sometimes.
great, yeah.
But it's nice not to suffer. It doesn't mean you have to like be on a bullhorn like all the time and be annoying.
Yeah.
You could pick your battles, but at least don't misrepresent yourself.
Exactly.
Like if you're gonna keep your powder dry, that's one thing. That's kind of a maneuvering tactical issue, right?
Sure.
You don't have to be the loudest one in every room yelling that they're all stupid or something, right? But at the same time, if you're asked your opinion, you should calibrate your answer to the audience, but don't compromise.
Absolutely.
Mises hated nothing more. He didn't talk to one of his prize students for like years because he compromised what he was saying about the gold standard. His name was Fritz Machlup. Yeah, there's a long story. He's a great economist, a great guy, Machlup. He was very nice to Mises, very good person. But Mises was very serious about this too. He said he felt he compromised and he had no respect for him for a couple of years. Yeah, he just cut him off for a while. And it took Mises' wife to talk. He was very intransigent like that. He was.
My gosh.
Enemies hated him, friends loved him kind of guy. And friends hated him if he hated him. but I respect that. I never met him, and who knows, maybe he would have hated me, who knows, but I respect him, and he's one of my models, so.
Yeah. To thine own self be true.
Yeah, and I'll just close, I guess, with Mises. Mises adopted this as his own expression he from Virgil's Aeneid, and the Latin translation would be, do not give in to evil, but proceed ever more boldly against it. And actually, the word evil in Latin, it's more like bad things, misfortune, bad tidings. Like, it could be evil things that were done to you, but it's just like, don't give in to misfortune. Just keep going. So that kind of the through line, I guess, is just like, no matter what you think is right, just go for your passion and like keep going. And
awesome.
And hopefully end up at a good place. And even if you don't, you tried. Yeah. Nothing else you could have done at that point, right?
That's
the counterfactual, you don't know. And
you don't know, right?
So it could have been worse.
Well, that's a perfect way to end this. Thank you.
Yep, of course, yeah.
All right.
Yep, thanks.
Thank you.